Hello and welcome to another episode of the Simon and Friends podcast. I'm Simon Short. Joining me this week is Josh Limsey. And Josh, welcome in, man. How you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good. It's almost time for the draft, so that's going to be exciting.
It's a
My Vikings are going to take a safety at 18 overall, unless Jeremiah Love falls miraculously. And so we're going to get the Harrison Smith replacement, so we'll get our safety for the next decade. So life is pretty good after Kyler Murray has a career resurgence and Super Bowl victory leading into next year. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic, Simon. So we're in good mood over here.
he's back, ladies and gentlemen. He's back. It was a few weeks. I told you I'd been tracking over the months a slight uptick in fan depression and
Yep.
football depression in you. And aside from what seemed like a twinge of sarcasm with we're going to take a safety with the 18th overall pick, um, you're back. You sound like you're back in. You're ready to go. Kyler has you rejuvenated. A guy
Yes.
you famously didn't even put on your free agency list,
No, I didn't. In my defense, he
right?
was still technically, well, whatever.
I don't think he was.
He
Actually, when you sent it to me, he was. That's right,
was
because I
the
messaged
issue.
you
The
that.
issue was I still had Malik Willis above him. I still had Malik
Right.
Willis above him as the top quarterback. But that's okay. It's different now. Now he's in Viking purple. That increases all players' value right away. So
I will say I'm in one of our dynasty leagues. I'm in a conversation, let's say, in trade talks involving a tight end, and
no,
I am trying to hold on to Hawkinson because I'm like, let's see if Kyler creates a
yeah,
little Trey McBride light action for one TJ Hawkinson this year.
yeah.
Only something we've been waiting on for 5 years with TJ Hawkinson, but we ball. All right, so we are here for Power Rankings Week, everybody, with Josh Limson, not just to talk about Vikings and our fantasy leagues, because that would bore everybody to tears, but it is the off-season version of our Power Rankings. And Josh, I feel like we found the right formula, the right schedule this year to really make this product what we want it to be. So we're taking the offseason in stages, just like the NFL does, and we are power ranking who's going to have the best offseason. So right now, we're taking a small step back from the draft. We will obviously continue draft conversations and draft previews over the next 2 weeks of this show, and then the however many shows end up on the Box Score Network channel. So make sure you guys are checking that out. If you're looking for draft talk, go into this feed, go into this channel, go into the Box Score Network YouTube channel, Pro Football Enterprises with Ben. Um, but on the show this week, we're taking a step back and we're looking back at free agency and coaching carousel. Which teams helped themselves the most during that period of the offseason? And then in 1 month, essentially, when Josh comes back, we'll update that power rankings via our draft grades, essentially, right? We'll let the draft and how the draft went kind of impact what our rankings are. And then maybe we'll get in a vibes check as well and move the teams up and down later in the summer based on how those conversations and hey, what veterans signed later after the draft and into training camp, those sorts of things. But off-season power rankings 1.0, Simon and Josh, free agency and coaching carousel update. Um, hadn't even done like a real big picture show on free agency and coaching carousel. So, Josh, looking back at this for you, kind of getting back into that headspace, looking at the landscape of how free agency and everything went again, what kind of went into your decision making, you think?
Yeah, so I think early on, what my biggest goal was to avoid the trap of quantity over quality. I
Mhm.
think that's probably the biggest theme for me tonight. And when people see and hear how far apart we are on some teams, I think there might still be some of that stuff that leaks in. There's a little bit of a foreshadowing there because it can be really tempting when you're looking at the list of which teams brought in which people when they bring in a number of guys at a position and their names that you recognize, it just feels like they're doing things and it feels like on paper they're
Hmm.
really improving. And so I think the first part of the process for me was sifting through that.
Yeah.
I'll mention some of my tiers. Some of my tiers are just about, is this just meh? Just a bunch of names, like a bunch of guys that are going to be on teams anywhere, somewhere, not doing having huge impacts. And then trying to separate those teams from teams where I think they actually moved the needle, where they actually got better, they actually upgraded, they actually got a few, like one player, couple players that are going to make an impact. So I think for me, the biggest challenge was kind of settling on which players. because I know for me, I like a lot of players that aren't always necessarily the best or most impactful players. So I got to try not to overvalue. And then you're going to see for sure that I definitely undervalued some players for where they ended up. So it'll be a fun exercise. But I think the biggest thing for me is, and this would be for anyone, right? Like I've fallen into the trap as a fan of just believing that my team, when they bring in 15 new names, it just feels like they're doing something. You know what I mean? Like it feels
Right.
like they're filling out the roster. Like we're not going to have any holes. We're going to have depth everywhere. We're going to have competent players all across the board. It never really shakes out that way,
Hmm.
even if you know all the names, right?
Yep.
Depending on how casual or not you are, like you and I are going to know most of the names, obviously, and probably people listening to this are probably going to know most of the names, um, but I think it can be misleading. So I started with sifting through that and tried to really focus in on like which coaching hires, which coaching departures, and which players roster shifts that I think actually altered the team a little bit. And then
Hmm.
I guess the other thing I'd say is trying to embrace or avoid. I don't know what I do with my hypocrisy. That's for the listeners to decide because I think I do a fair amount of talking out of both sides of my mouth on this show. And I think there'll be some teams that I gave credit for being aggressive's sake, even though I
Hmm.
probably
Hmm.
don't even believe that what they're trying to do is going to be effective. But I think at least for this specific ranking, trying to do something in free agency earns respect with me.
Yeah.
When they tank their draft and then when things happen in the offseason, then they'll perpetually fall down our list a little bit. But I think for
Hmm.
now, I gave a little bit of a nudge to some teams for like, hey, they're doing something here. They're making attempts to try what they can. So
Yeah. And there's a difference between like, okay, they made a lot of moves in free agency to try and help their team because they just had a lot of cap space, so they kind of just had to, right? Because you have to spend a certain amount of money. Versus, okay, that got creative, right? They did these restructures, they did these cuts. Like I think about how the Bears released Tremaine Edmonds and signed Devin Bush for a little bit cheaper, right? That wasn't just um we don't like Tremaine Edmonds anymore and we like Devin Bush, so we're gonna swap them out. That was okay, what can we do to offset some costs and be a little creative? Now I say that it's not like I have the Bears in my top eight or top 10 or anything, but that's a more interesting move, I think, than let's just say the Browns who lose Devin Bush and then sign Quincy Williams for a little bit less, right? They're just and maybe it's not. Maybe I'm starting to talk both out of both sides of my mouth here on that one. Um, I'm trying to think of another team that just had caps. Like I mean, the Jets and getting Demario Davis, right? Like
yeah,
they had money to spend and they didn't have a linebacker, so they just like threw a bunch of money at a linebacker that we know.
right,
Um, and I mean, I still think they've got a better player than the Bears got in Devin Bush, but like how everything kind of fits together, what
right,
the big picture outlook is for free agency, because free agency is interesting with the NFL because I think the rule in terms of spending is they have like a 3 year window that they have to spend a certain amount of money in. So it's not like I think the NBA is like each year they have to hit a certain financial floor, which is why they like pay out checks at a certain point in the season if they haven't reached the league minimum, right, for the cap. The NFL, I think they have a 3 year window to do that.
okay,
So it's not just about um, who can who's spending the most money at a certain point. It's like how they're kind of functioning in, okay, what can we spend for next year? Okay, what did we spend for last year? There, there's different ways to look into it and read it. I ultimately tried to keep it to like who just got better, right? Who made their team better this year. And there are certain teams that I have kind of earmarked for. I want to see what your reasoning is for being lower on this team, but like, how much do we get into like overpaying, right?
yeah,
Or kind of misusing their capital, even if they got some good players in? Should they have used it elsewhere? That's something I'll be interested in seeing if we bring up.
right,
Um, and then the coaching hires, like, trying to like dig back and sort through all that because there's at least one team that I know I felt really good about their coaching move and feel less good about their roster moves. And it's like, okay, but maybe. isn't that kind of the point? Like you want this new leader in, you want this new person in
Right.
charge. So that doesn't always mean the roster construction is all going to happen at once. It means they're setting a foundation, right? Um, and it's funny I say that, and I know listeners probably thought it was like two different teams in their heads, right? And so there's two different versions of that, I think,
Yeah.
right? One where it's a positive connotation, one where there's negative. So there's a lot of ways to dig into it. So let's just get after it. Um, what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw up our graphic here, and it's gonna go 8 teams at a time. If this is your first time here, your first time seeing power rankings. Thank you for being here. If you're on YouTube and you're finding us for the first time, thank you so much. Like, subscribe, comment. We really appreciate it. If you're on audio, A1 Day One, appreciate it as always. And check out all of our other stuff too. But here is our Simon and Friends podcast, Offseason Power Rankings 1.0 with Josh. Here's our teams 1 through 8. So on the left hand column is my ranking. On the middle column, that's Josh's ranking. And what we do with these power rankings is we try to get to a consensus through gentlemanly debate and spirited backing of our own personal beliefs. Or I just bully Josh into doing what I want to do, or Josh wears me down with whatever statistic he's found, and I just give in. We'll come to a consensus ranking there on the far right. But Josh, what immediately stands out to me is you have the Houston Texans as having your best free agency coaching carousel part of the offseason in the entire NFL. Talk to me about Houston and why they're the best team in the NFL for you.
Well, they were going to be number two because I had the Rams at number one, and then I was
Right, right, right.
scared that people were going to say to me, "Well, you just had the Rams at number one going into the playoffs, and you've had the Rams at number one in the power ranking." So I didn't want to be labeled as too hardcore Rams. So I think the Rams are probably going to slot in at one, and we'll talk about why shortly. But what I liked about Houston is they acknowledged what they need to do. They didn't just bring in one offensive lineman, they brought in a bunch. Yes, you could say that's a little bit of fluff, right? Braden Smith has an injury history. Wyatt Teller's getting up there, but they did bring in guys to help bolster that offensive line. And on top of that, they brought in David Montgomery, a guy who I really like, who actually gives the running back room a little bit of tenacity, a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
attitude, a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
vibe back there. I don't think anyone walked into Houston worrying about Woody Marks or 84-year-old Nick Chubb. Like David Montgomery in there, that's a real running back, who I think is going to be really helpful. So I liked that they did that. On the defensive side, this is a defense that was one of the best last year, and then they bring in Sheldon Rankins, who is a great complement to their edge rushers. They re-signed Daniil Hunter. It was expensive, but they got him back for the next year, and so they're going to have a ferocious defense. And because of their defense, I like that they brought in Reed Blankenship. Like that's not
Mm-hmm.
super exciting. He's not the best safety in the NFL, but on this defense, I think he's a nice little addition, and I think he's gonna be able to make some plays with them. So I just when I was looking through their moves, they all felt like slightly above average, or just like this is a good way to deal with this roster, who again is a playoff team already. CJ Stroud, I'm losing a little faith in CJ Stroud, but also I think a lot of his shortcomings are based on the fact that how much he's pressured and things like that. And so I don't know. I'm looking forward to see what Houston does this year, and their free agency gives me a lot of hope for a team that I've been higher on than most for the past few years. So I think there's a little bit of volume there, a little bit of that quantity stuff I was talking about at the beginning of the pod about did I overvalue this? They brought a lot in, but when a team does that, when they know their issues and then they address them with quantity like that, I do kind of nudge them in that direction. So they would have technically been my two, even though I put them at one. So I don't know. Probably doesn't sway you to keep them this high because you had them at like 21 or something. So,
Yes, I have them. I have them at 21. And granted, I think not that a guard in his 30s should change things this much from 21 to 1, but I did. I think I forgot to write down Wyatt Teller. Probably because I was so focused on the fact that I missed for a while that they also brought in Evan Brown, who's a nice
yep.
little kind of backup three position flexibility backup player. The thing for me with the Texans, and I do like David Montgomery, but it just feels like it's in the line of like they tried Joe Mixon. That clearly didn't work with the foot injury and the whole mystery around that. Then Nick Chubb, and like clearly that was going to be what it was, but it just feels like another older, like slower
Yeah.
running back gets brought in and David Montgomery. So the optics of it aren't great, but I think if you really if you really look at it, yeah, Montgomery, like maybe he's not what was when he first got to Detroit, right?
Right.
Um, but I just especially the running backs, man. You know me and I love Montgomery. He's been like my favorite running back in the NFL
Yeah.
for a few years, and but I could just see him with how that run game has been developed under the D'Amico Ryan's regime,
Yeah.
like him just going back there and having 456 yards for the season,
Yeah.
like and just kind of being toast. Like I can if I just put my like wide scale NFL viewer brain on, like I can just see where that's just not he's gonna have no juice.
Right.
The line is gonna still be a mess and it's because the context of how Houston plays all this stuff. Titus Howard, I need to go back actually. Do you have on Titus Howard what exactly they got for him in the trade? Do you have that?
They traded him to the Browns for a fifth round pick.
Yeah, so like at that point, like I would rather just have Titus Howard than
Yeah.
Braden Smith. Like it's funny that over the last 2 years, the Texans have been like, we need to fix our offensive line, and they've gotten rid of their best offensive lineman to do that. With Larry Tunsil 2 years ago, and then Titus
Yep.
Howard this year. Um, and like Braden Smith is nice when he's fine and healthy, but they
Yep.
gave him a contract that's like either backup swing tackle or maybe he's playing guard. And now if they have Wyatt Teller, like it looks like they're going to be doing, give Ursary another shot at left tackle, which I'm fine with. Teller's going to play, I assume, next to him because Ingram's on the right side, right? Ingram at right
Yeah.
guard, Braden Smith probably at
Ingram's
right
the right
tackle.
guard. Yeah.
Um, and then they probably keep, I think it's Jake Andrews at center. And then you've got, I know they brought back the veteran Trent Brown, so he'll be kind of their backup tackle. The Evan Brown will kind of be their backup interior guy. So like that has settled actually into like a pretty clean and nice group, especially if Ursary can take a jump with Teller next to him.
Yeah.
Um, hasn't Teller been a right guard throughout most of his career?
So the depth chart I have
'Cause
pulled up says Wyatt Teller will be the right guard, Evan Brown at left guard, actually, and Ed Ingram as a backup.
on the bench,
Yeah, which is
yeah.
fair. He can run block. He can't pass block very well. The
But
Vikings were not sad to lose him.
they just had to re-sign him
They did.
to ultimately end up doing that. Because I think Batonio was the left guard and Taylor was the right guard. I'm gonna annoy fans with this over the offseason, so I'm sorry for everybody already watching and listening. That's like this guy's really hung up on which side of it. I've completely flipped on the whole like because I love offensive line play, and I've completely
Yeah,
flipped on like when I first started loving offensive line, I was like, I want everybody to be able to just switch sides and switch positions and yada and like I knew here that that was way harder to actually do than to just say, but I still like prioritized it. It was a little
right.
Packersy. Like I was like, I just value the guys that can switch around and like guys like Titus Howard who could play three,
Yeah.
four positions. I really appreciate it. And I'm just like, just let everybody play one spot. Just where are you comfortable? Okay, that's
Let
where I
them be
put.
good at the one spot. Yes.
Because if you're just unnecessarily moving people around, because like let's say they were going to put Teller as a left guard for the first time in his career, right? Meanwhile, in free agency, there's still left guards you could just play. There's still left
Right.
guards you could just sign. So like just go get one of them instead, even if they're a little worse. But whatever. I
Right.
digress. So the Texans should come up from 21. Because what was the because Reed Blankenship, who was their and this was the thing I was looking at. Who was their free safety last year? Because when they signed him, I'm just like, this team has such an embarrassment of riches in defense and especially in the
Yeah.
backfield. That I'm like, did they need to spend the however much on Blankenship versus spending that on another offensive player, another offensive lineman. So let me look here at
Yes.
who was their safety last year and who they're actually upgrading over.
And
I mean,
pull
I
up
guess
back.
okay.
I
So
don't know if they
this
lost.
just says Petrie, but he's their slot. So let me get to snap count. I
Yep.
know everybody's loving this right now, man. They are, but this is what the show is, everybody. This is what the show is.
Hey, this is a big spot. This is a top five team, or this
Yeah,
is not a top five team, but
yeah,
this is the
yeah. Even though up here we have five of the 8 teams the same in our top 8, which is good for us.
that is good.
And it's going to get wild later, but we got to talk about this top spot, even though we're just going to end up putting them at like 13 anyways. Um, so Kalen Bullock one safety, Lassiter one corner, Stingley the other corner, Petrie the nickel, and then the next DB was Miles Bryant. in terms of amount of snaps played, if I'm reading this right, or
Yeah,
MJ Stewart. So I get if you're just getting a little bit of consistency, and I wonder if we went on. You have PFF up? You have PFF up there?
I can. Yes.
How much was Petrie moving around? Because they want him in the slot. He's their nickel. But if I'm looking at these, the way the snap count is, I'm just on Pro Football Board because they started the year with CJ Gardner Johnson, right? And then
Yep.
they released him during the year because everybody hated him because he's CJ Gardner Johnson. Um, and two
Yeah,
years ago, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Petrie, according to PFF, he only played 50, just over 50 snaps at free safety, but he played like over 200 in the box. Like he's
Right.
their,
Yeah.
he's a run support safety anyway in that
And then
regards.
how many in the slot?
Slot corner 560. So
Okay. All right. So he still was predominantly getting in there. Um, but yeah, if now so now they just have a little bit of flexibility with Reed Blankenship. He's a guy that can play the free safety, but he can also come down and hit and tackle.
yep.
Um, and play the run a little bit.
And
So
Bullock was their other official safe, like the
and
one that
Bullock
got
is
the
their
goal
other
in the
guy, and
runs.
he's a
Yeah.
little bit more rangy and but he's certainly improved his tackling since coming to Houston, obviously. So
Right.
like they did have a nicer offseason, I think than I gave them credit for. They kept their coaching staff in place, and their coaching staff is a pretty good group. I just didn't love like I guess all the names of what they actually did and on the offensive line, and then Montgomery. Like even though if I just think about Simon and how much he likes Dave Montgomery, I like it. But then I zoom out and I'm like,
Yeah.
older, already slower running back going to this group is tough. But hey, if Ursary takes a leap, that's going to be, I think, the big
Yeah. Well,
turning point for them. If
I
he
think it's
takes a big
fair.
leap, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's fair to for how much we love David Montgomery. He's a 28-year-old running back, right? And if he is headed for a lead back role, um, he's been he's been great with Detroit, but Detroit has a better running back that they balance him out with, right? Like he had
Yeah.
pretty specific roles, so it depends on what steam he has left. But I just like him as a player, and I think he's a lot more fearsome back there than what they have. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a fair point for sure.
All right. Let's. It also reminds me, remember when Jamal Williams was there and it was Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift in Detroit?
Hmm.
And then essentially Williams became Montgomery for them, and
Yep.
Montgomery just felt like he had way more juice. And because once Williams went to the Saints, he had like 1 year of goal line work with the Saints, and then he was basically done.
Yep.
That if Detroit's letting Montgomery go for as big of a part of because remember Jamal Williams was the guy that when Dan Campbell got there, Williams the one that was like crying in the training camp hype videos, like he was the heart of the team,
Right.
and then they let him go because they're like, he ain't got it anymore. And
Right.
now Montgomery kind of took that both in play style, but also heart of the team sort of feel. And if they're letting him go, I kind of just feel like it means he doesn't have juice anymore.
Right.
Um, I think for me, if I look at my rankings and I think about where consensus for us between 1 and 21 is, my my top 14 are my teams that I think had like good, productive, positive off season so far.
Okay.
So I think they belong in the top 14 or top 15, I guess if I'm gonna add them somewhere. So we'll sort that out when we get to the next page. Somewhere probably between like 11 and 15 for me is where they're gonna net out.
Okay. I think that's fair.
All right. So obviously we have the Rams here.
Yep.
Um, because unlike you, I was not scared, and I literally just when I updated this graphic, just didn't move the Rams logo from number one for me. Um, they retained their coaching staff, right? They kept Chris Shula, which is huge, I think. They were
Hmm.
able to keep, while LaFleur left as OC, Nate House didn't get a head coaching job or an OC job elsewhere, so they get to keep him in-house as a young, bright offensive mind who gets to come be the OC now. And then obviously they just hit their biggest issue on the team in their defensive backfield, and they hit it hard, right? Between Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Cam Curl, major upgrade at their biggest and really only weakness. So those two things for me, it was an easy slam dunk one for the Rams.
Yep. That's why it was a slam dunk for me too. Not only do you get two of the top guys at the position that you need the most in the free agency class that you've been, by luck has it. This is that it all happened this year, right? But then they trade for they traded for Trent McDuffie and they signed Jalen Watson. So now you get two of the guys that are top on that those positions, and they've played together and they have the chemistry, and that's the only thing your team needs to get yourself back to where you were. So, and then Cam Curl re-signing for sure. But yeah, those were the biggest. Those felt like the smartest, splashiest plays for this free agency for any of the teams, and so that was an easy one for me. That those are just two big needle movers right there. So.
And then if we quickly look at a couple other teams that we both have in this tier at least, the
Mhm.
Panthers, they make the big swings on Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd. They also get Rasheed Walker as a really nice, cheap
Yeah.
option on the offensive line while Ike Ekwonu is going to get back from a knee injury. The Saints just signing good players. David Edwards, Travis Etienne, updating his last name pronunciation, and then your guy Caden Ellis. You were wondering if I was going to say his name or not. Oh, that's what the Saints. That you don't even have the Saints up here just yet. But
Nope.
the Raiders. Um,
Yeah.
or I want to come back to the Raiders because they're a team that like did they maybe just make a lot of moves, but then the Ravens, obviously Trey Hendrickson,
Yep.
but they lose Tyler Linderbaum, which is why I'm slightly below than you because they still have a huge hole at center. But the other thing that kept the Ravens up for me, along with Hendrickson, despite the Linderbaum situation, is head coach getting Jesse Minter, getting Declan Doyle as OC specifically because even Minter, I was like. I wasn't. I was maybe like 70% of where like most people were on Minter because like he came
Mhm.
to the Chargers, and by all the numbers, they've had just like a good defense. Now he hasn't come in and been like Shula had better defenses by the numbers than Minter had. Um, but everything else about Minter, like not only defense and defensive scheming, but just like the person and the overall coaching philosophy, everyone's just really high on. But I'm really high on Declan Doyle. Like I was out here in January being like head coach material for Declan Doyle,
Mhm.
head coach Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Declan Doyle. Um, but to land him as OC, I think is incredible. So
Yeah.
so the coaching and Hendrickson get them in the top eight for me.
Yeah.
But the Raiders, let's dig into the Raiders.
Yeah.
Clint Kubiak, I don't think was I think is somebody as a head coach candidate that went from like week 10 of the season, like, oh, Seattle offense is playing well, so he'll get a look, but no one's really excited about it,
Yep.
to like, oh, they're rolling in the playoffs, so now he's the like belle of the ball sort of
Right.
situation. So we had a big leap in what our brains thought about Kubiak, I think, just over the course of a few weeks, much like running back Kenneth Walker. And then they go in free agency and they replace Devin White and Atlanta Roberts with Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker. They re-sign Eric Stokes. They replaced Dylan Parham with Spencer Burford, replaced Tyler Lockett with Jalen Naylor, lost Geno Smith, signed Kwity Paye and Tyler Linderbaum, and then retained Max Crosby. So like you can make a argument, I think that they maybe took a step back in some places on the roster. Um, they didn't go out and go crazy with free agency and free agency money, I don't think. Um, Other than spending big on Linderbaum, which is I think really big and really huge and impactful for their line, but also what's going to be their rookie quarterback. I think keeping Max Crosby in like
Hmm.
somehow that situation like makes that relationship better. I think that's just huge for them. So
That is
I'm
huge.
excited for Kubiak. I'm excited to see what that offense looks like. But I think the way they just like I think pretty modestly helped that roster. They didn't go out and spend 30 million on Alec Pierce and then 20 million on Devin Lloyd. They made a few nice moves and they bet on some relationships and some guys that can maybe take on bigger roles elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I do like what the Raiders did. Um, but like I don't want to now just all of a sudden put Kubiak at the top of my coaching power
Right.
rankings when he wasn't there for me when by the time the playoffs started.
Yeah, for sure. I think last year specifically I fell into the trap of, hey, the Raiders are gonna be good this year, right? Like
Oh
I
yeah.
thought they did enough last year to be set up to have success with Ashton Genty. Because to me that's priority number one, and that's part of why I have them up so high is because I think they took steps to try to get him going. They have a new head coach that loves to do the play action. They got their insurance policy with Kirk O'Chains, right? If Mendoza is not
Mhm.
ready, they have a guy that can run Kubiak's offense seamlessly. And so they don't have to take a step back. They can let Mendoza learn under Kirk Cousins if they need to. Or, they draft Mendoza and he's He's exciting right off the bat. Retaining Max Crosby is crazy after all that, and now you throw in Quay Walker and Kobe Dean. That's really fun. That's a fun defense.
Yeah.
Still have like I liked Eric Stokes last year, and I know he's not super exciting, but he came back. Like they'll have a decent defense there. Linderbaum for me was the big thing though, because if they can get the running game going, because they have the draft capital with Ashton Jennings. He's a great running back. If you get him
Hmm.
going, your team can be really successful. And so they felt like they got a little bit improved on the defense, felt like they got their offensive line ready to support that. And a guy with Kubiak, like you said, he's not going to be at the top of anyone's coaching list, but you know what you're going to get from him. And so, last year I was all like, oh, the Raiders are stabilized, and then they stunk. So this year I'm also high on the Raiders, and so they're probably going to stink again. But for at least for now, it appears as if they're doing a lot of the right things. So, and to me, from where they were at last year, this is kind of like I think I've already alluded to it. I told you, Simon, this is my needle moving tier. Like they did enough to move the needle for me in the right direction. Will they
Hmm.
stay there? I don't know. But I think that they've done enough to instill some hope. If I'm a Vegas fan, I'm like, okay, we got something to roll into the season with, and maybe have a shot to compete for a wild card or something. If I'm extrapolating outward, but
And yeah, we fell into the trap with because I know even I did with the Raiders at least in term. I didn't think they'd have a lot of wins, but in terms of Genty specifically, and I was like, this offensive line passes the test of I think going to be good enough to support that running. But then the coaching of the offensive line was horrible last year, obviously. So I think I actually just looked it up. Rick Dennison is the O line coach. He was actually Vikings O line coach for two seasons, 2019, 2020. Don't know how you feel about that. Um, but they have a real offensive line coach, which is good, as opposed to what happened last year. Spencer Burford, I know I said replaced Parham with Burford. That's kind of just on the balance sheet. I actually think Burford is like a little below Parham in terms of ability, but he's coming from San Francisco, which is where Clint Kubiak spent some time as well. And you think about what San Francisco offensive line does, and it's just ones and zeros. It's like if this, then this. Get out in space, zone blocking scheme. Linderbaum is a very good zone blocker with his athleticism. Um, Jackson Powers Johnson, it looks like he's going to end up being a right guard. He's very athletic and he's huge. So if I mean, I think they could go guard at with their second pick, 33 or whatever it is. But if it's Burford, Linderbaum, and Powers Johnson as a trio, that group is a little unproven in terms of overall snaps other than Linderbaum, but those guys fit, right? And with, like you said, what Kubiak wants to do in terms of play action, um, I think all of that could make space for Genty in the run game.
yep,
Um, we also both have the Chargers here.
yep,
I have them at three, you have them at six. That's mostly Mike McDaniel for me, but another team that improved vastly at center and Tyler Biadasz. I obviously wanted them to do more at guard than Cole Strange, but whatever. But
yep.
they also re-signed Khalil Mack, which was huge to me in terms of that defense.
I wrote this similar. I wrote they re-signed six defensive players from last year's defense that
Mm,
was a top 10 scoring defense. And then Chris O'Leary, who is their new
hmm.
DC, taking over Jesse Minter, he was there earlier as a safeties coach or something, or a DB's coach or
Yep.
something. So like you have a guy who knows the players, knows Derwin James, knows all this stuff. So that, and I read a few articles. He's planning, at least coach speak, whatever that means. He wants to keep what they have, which was a really good defense last year.
Hmm.
What did they have a problem with? Is their offensive line, and they also filled in holes there, like you said. Like Cole Strange isn't going to get anyone excited, but they're addressing at least what they can with what they can for now. And I just think Harbaugh is building a lot of good stuff out there. So keep Herbert upright. Who knows?
And I will say, like, I do like Cole Strange for 5 million bucks instead of Zion Johnson for 16 or whatever he's getting from the
Right,
Browns. So like that I wouldn't have wanted them to go the other way with it.
right.
But Biotish is so stud, man. That's
Yeah.
such a great move for them.
And I
Um,
forgot before I forget to mention this. I think subtle, not necessarily needle moving, but I think bringing in Alec Ingold is not a bad idea either. Simon, a nice
wonder who would
fullback.
make the first fullback mention. I wrote his name down. I wrote
Yeah,
his name
there you
down.
go. He's not nobody.
And
He's not
and
nobody.
Charlie Kolar. Like
Yeah,
let's talk about all of them. Let's talk
they're gonna
about the
have all the
blocking tight
blockers
ends.
they
Let's
need. They're gonna have all the
talk.
blocking they need.
I mean, Ingle was like a multi-time All-Pro fullback under McDaniel in Miami, right? So
Yep.
like
Mhm. Yeah, I think
Who else can we mention here?
Trevor Penning.
Dalvin Tomlinson. They
Trevor
they've
Penning.
Trevor, Trevor, Jesus. All right, you ruined it. Um, yeah, O'Leary's interesting because they definitely just sent him like on an internship, right? They were like,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
you need a little experience. You need to go do a mission trip,
Yeah.
and
Where was he?
whatever
Western
directional
Michigan?
Michigan he was. Yeah, he was at
Yeah,
one of those
Western
directional
Michigan. Yeah.
Michigans.
Yeah.
So Harbaugh just called back on those Michigan ties and was like, hey, I need somebody to let my guy be DC for a year before I lose Minter so he can practice how to do it, and then I'm going to take him back.
Yep.
And they were like, yes, Master Harbaugh, we will do that for you. Um, all right, let's see. Uh, we both also have the 49ers and the Chiefs, I have Niners, you have Chiefs. We both have the other one just a little bit lower. So I'll talk more about them in a little bit.
Hmm.
But we both generally like what they did. Talk to me about the Lions. Why do you have the Lions all the way up here at five for you? Because I have them very middle of the pack for me. I have them down at 19. Talk to me about why you have the Lions up here.
Yeah, you're probably going to tell me why this is a stupid idea, but
Great.
I got,
Love to be. You love that they got rid of David Montgomery, right? You love that the Texans got him, so they're number one, and you love that the
well,
Lions moved on from him, so he's number five.
it's funny because I had a feeling you were going to say this to me. How can I celebrate Montgomery to the Texans and still the Lions up here? And here's the deal. I think this year the Lions are going to say, screw it. Jahmyr Gibbs is getting every carry until he needs to go to the oxygen mask for a little bit. Like, I feel like this is the year of Jahmyr. It's going to be just
Nice.
Jahmyr Gibbs. When they need Isaiah Pacheco to run through a wall, he'll do that for them. But yeah, I'm definitely not saying it's an upgrade from Pacheco over Montgomery, but Pacheco's fine. When your starting running back is Jahmyr Gibbs, you can have whoever you want afterwards.
Yeah.
Um, no, my needle mover on the Lions, and maybe I got suckered into some highlights is the Cade Mays signing at center because last year
Yeah, baby. Yeah,
I think
baby.
last year they found out how difficult life was going to be without Frank Ragnow. Who did they,
Hmm.
was it Glasgow last year that was their center most of
They
the
tried
time?
Glasgow. They tried so many people, man. They tried
Yeah.
so many people.
And so what for my Detroit write up, I just kind of watched a bunch of Cade Mays highlights and I was like, man,
Oh, heck yeah.
this
Oh,
dude,
that'll get you going. Yeah,
he's
that'll
got
if you
he's
just do that, that'll put them at five for sure.
well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like what did I write down? Oh, so his pad level's good. He's quick in a way that he's like really smooth and slick with it. Like he's not
Hmm.
just like moving his legs fast. His movements are
Yep.
purposeful. He uses that advantage of like, I know the snap count, which you should if you're an offensive lineman. And just the way he gets his leverage set for where he needs the hole to be made is just really top notch. And Carolina had a good running game last year, and so in my head I'm thinking, yeah, they had a good running game for the most part with Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. What if the
Hmm.
Lions now have this running game with Jahmyr Gibbs? Like they've already had a guy that's explosive back there. So I started salivating a little bit at that, even though I don't want the Lions to be good again because last year was nice to see them fall off a little bit because they were a perennial contender.
Right.
And then, they didn't get an exciting coaching hire. That said, I think Drew Petzing, Jared Goff makes sense. And it's not,
Hmm.
again, I'm not going to sit here and say Drew Petzing is the offensive coordinator that I should be coveting right now. But when you have a quarterback like Jared Goff who's really good with the play action, right? Petzing is a little predictable, but if you've reestablished your offensive line that you've had in the past, it was good last year. They were all sorts of all over the place. But Cade Mays comes and solidifies that. You get your running game going, you get your play action going, and now all of a sudden the Lions, offensively especially, are kind of right back where they were a couple of years ago, I think. And so for me, I started to think, you know what, the Lions weren't that far off. Last year feels like a blip now, and it looks like they used their free agency to do what they could initially to reset to get back going. I mean, they did get giving up David Montgomery did get them Juice Scruggs, so there is some offensive line depth coming back in. Not necessarily the needle moving move there, but um, yeah, for me it was just Cade Mays opening up more holes for Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think if I'm the Lions, I'm saying, hey Jahmyr, like if you're ready for it, you get all the carries this year. We're not going to do this split thing like. Maybe first 5 games of the season, if they can eke out some victories, they might let him save up, but this has got to be the year to go for it if they want to get anywhere with Goff. So anyway, that's the Lions up at 5. I was like, I I don't think they did as much as other teams, but I think in my head I was like, this Cade Mays pickup could be one of the more under the radar or not under the radar signings of the offseason. And so that moves it enough for me. So they got a little bit of got a pretty big bump for that. So
This is the chess game Josh and I play because I knew he was going to say Jahmyr Gibbs more carries. he knew I knew he would say that, and he knew I would detract from that. So then he comes back with Cade Mays and why that is so brilliant. And listen, it worked. Great job by you.
Thank you.
Juice Scruggs. I don't think there's a bigger delta for any player in the NFL on how cool the name is versus what the player actually is. Um, Sorry to Juice Scruggs. Hopefully it works out with Detroit. I mean, Hank Fraley, much better O-line coach than anybody Scruggs had in Houston. So like
There you
maybe it
go.
works out because he is
There you
interesting.
go.
Um, I think I let vibes get into my ranking a little bit with Detroit because if you just look at the moves on paper, I do like it. I also, if you want to talk about O-line deep cuts, I like Ben Barch. I like Ben Barch a lot, and he got hurt very early for the Niners last year, but he was slated to have like his first real full year as a starter for the Niners. And I like him. He's the guy that at the combine got interviewed about how he gained weight from being a tight end to an offensive lineman. And he made those crazy shakes of like peanut butter, egg, protein powder, Gatorade, yogurt, cottage cheese, or something like that.
Ooh.
And he made these shakes and he ate them twice a day, every
Oh,
day, like to bulk and gain weight.
no thanks.
Um, yeah, this clip went viral. I'll have to share it at some point. But he was that guy, and of course the Niners got him. He was like ball player, right?
Yeah.
Um, so like sneaky, I think he could play for them. And if they move Penei Sewell to the left side, which I don't love, if at 17 they're in a perfect place to just draft a left tackle. But anyways,
Right.
we won't do that right now. But the whole thing of like Taylor Decker and Dan Skipper giving those like emotional interviews after their last game,
Hmm.
and then Decker coming back and wanting to play, and then being like, we're good,
We're
we're
good.
good. And then Frank Ragnow, I know you tried to play last year when you had to carry your hamstring into the facility. It was so
Yeah.
far off your bone. But also, can you give us some of your money back because you didn't play? That would be great. Um, the vibes of all that are just
Bad.
really yucky.
Yep.
When this is supposed to be the family team, right? The like I love you guys
Yep.
more than anything. If that's their whole vibe, and now the position group that made them, they're treating this way. The vibes
Yep.
are just off. So I
Yeah.
think I'm letting
It's
that sneak in a little bit because yeah, Cade Mays, Ben Barch, like the offensive line just ran out of juice last year, so they're adding a bunch of young guys. 'Cause it's not like they have a bunch of money to spend, so they're trying to spend in right ways. Um, Montgomery for I forget what he would have been making for them, but like he got a little extension with the Texans. So Montgomery for let's say 6 million or Pacheco for 1.8. Like okay,
yeah.
that's a shrewd move. Amik Robinson gets paid by the Commanders, so then they sneaky get Roger McCreary on the minimum
Yep.
as a corner piece. I like that a lot. Um, so like and Petzing, you mentioned it like when Petzing got to work with Clayton Adams, a good O-line coach and run game developer in Arizona, they were awesome together. And when he got to work with in Cleveland and those quarterbacks that were doing like play actiony type stuff under Stefanski, that was good. That was a good match for him. Then in Arizona, things fall apart because this year they lose Clayton Adams, and then he and Kyler Murray never work because that's not the style of play Kyler Murray is. But I was going to Detroit. Jared Goff is that style of guy. Hank Fraley is that level of O-line coach. So I think it's a really good fit for Petzing. And so it's
Yep.
funny when the Lions were interviewing all these people that, were these hotter names, Cliff Kingsbury and Mike McDaniel and, all these guys. Everyone was all excited about that. And then it was Drew Petzing. Everyone was like, really? The little bald guy from Arizona? But like, I do think it's a really good stylistic fit. So they should get moved up too. I'm not, they're not gonna be up here at 5, but I think they belong in up in that top 15, 16 good off seasons because I think you sold me. So we'll get them up on this next page.
Nice.
All right,
Sweet.
let's let's actually do these rankings a little bit now because we're 44 minutes in. I tried to this time get us to just talk about all these teams and then let's see how quickly we can sort through actually putting a rank together. So we're gonna put the Rams at 1, right?
Yep. Easy.
And here, so everyone doesn't see how the sausage gets made. We're gonna put the Rams at 1. Who in our for our consensus rank do you want to put at 2? We both have the
So,
Panthers above the Raiders. We didn't really talk about them, but they just another team that just added good players, kept their coaches in house. Like they made a lot of smart moves. They can do anything in the draft. They got some big names in free agency. Should they be at 2? Like we didn't even talk about them.
well, you're talking about the Panthers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Panthers. did everything right, it feels like to me as well. They had some of the splashy signings, so I would be okay with them there. I mean, I think the Chargers can be in the mix because we were only a few spots up, and I really
Hmm.
like what we said about the Chargers. But I think, yeah, it makes sense to put the Panthers next. The Panthers just got some of the big name players. I wrote for the Panthers like if I believed in Bryce Young, this would be probably my hottest team to pick after how they performed last year because they gave the Rams a run for the money in the playoffs. Like they were there last year. So yeah, I like that there. I like that
And
top
yeah,
four. That's a
just
weird top four.
that's a very weird top
If
four.
people didn't know what we were ranking, they'd be like, "What in the world kind of ranking has the Raiders and the Panthers in the top four?"
Let, let me show everybody what exactly is going on over here while in the background. Yeah, we're looking at the Rams, the Panthers, the Chargers, and the Raiders as the top four teams of our offseason power rankings at this point. Should just say for the Panthers, replace DJ Waddle with Jalen Phillips, replace Christian Roseboom with Devin Lloyd, replace Cade Mays with Luke Fortner, quote unquote replaced Austin Corbett with Rasheed Walker. They're not the same
Yeah,
position at all, but
forgot to
just
mention that.
smart offensive line depth. Then they also signed John Mechie. They lose Ashawn Robinson and Rico Dowdle, but like Phillips and Lloyd, those were just the swings. And I talked about them in the award show with Peyton when it happened. So that's probably partly why we're not diving in. But like they just, I think, just made such smart moves and big
Yeah,
swings and high ceiling players
and I think
that for where in their timeline, it also just felt like the exact right moves. They didn't overcompensate on the offense, right? Just in case Bryce Young's not the quarterback and they have to do something different on the offense. But that defense got better. And if they wanted to get it to a real level, this was the kind of thing they had to do
yeah,
without having a like top 10 pick for a like high level edge rusher, right? This was the right move. So I really liked what they did.
and I feel like there's. I think I was waiting the Phillips pickup higher as well, just because like a lot of times when you pay top dollar for a high end edge rusher like him, like they didn't even have to do that after he came back from injury. Like he came back from injury and proved in Philadelphia that he was kind of back and he was good. So they already got to see the trial run, so it doesn't feel like it's as big of a like as big of an uncertainty. Can he still do it, or is he fully back, or is this too risky to pay this guy? Right? It feels more of a sure thing. Anything can happen. I'm not saying he can't get hurt again, but to get the edge rusher after seeing him come back from injury and prove that he's back to where he can be, like it feels like they got a little bit of a steal there too in that regard. So
Let's talk about the Giants because we haven't hit them yet.
nope.
Um, the Giants obviously get a huge bump from me for John Harbaugh being their head
Mhm.
coach.
Yep.
They also bring in Matt Nagy for OC, defensive coordinator Bernard Wilson. From a coaching staff standpoint, Nagy is kind of like what we talked about with Petzing, where it was like we were so sure, I was so sure this was just going to be Todd Monken, right? And like Monken and Harbaugh together and whatever defensive coordinator they wanted to bring from Baltimore days, it was going to be awesome. And then Nagy definitely feels like a large step down, right?
Yeah.
But we've never seen Nagy be a true like just a play calling OC. Like he's either been OC in name and Monday to Saturday tasks for Andy Reid, or he's
Right.
been a head coach also calling plays. So like, what's the sweet spot in the middle? I'm interested to see it.
Yeah.
Denard Wilson, DC. It's really funny when Mike McDaniel went to Seattle to be the head coach, and Harbaugh had a decision to make for a defensive coordinator in Baltimore. He had Denard Wilson. He had Anthony Weaver. He had Zachary Orr. He chose Zach Orr. Denard Wilson goes to Tennessee to be DC. Anthony Weaver goes to Miami to be DC. And now that everything is kind of blown up, Orr is like an assistant position coach somewhere. Harbaugh brings in Denard Wilson. He's like, hey, man, I made the wrong call. Will you come be my DC? And Baltimore with Minter was like, hey, Anthony Weaver, will you come back and be our
Yeah.
DC? So, like, clearly just like, whoops, we made the wrong decision here. But in terms of their team, they released Bobby Okereke, which I didn't love. I didn't agree with,
No.
but they get a little cheaper with Jermaine Edmonds. They replace Wandale Robinson with Darnell Movies slash Calvin Austin III, or really, if you think about it, Isaiah Likely. They replaced Cordell Flott with Greg Newsome, replaced Daniel Bellinger, like I said, with Likely. Dane Pelton with Jason Pinnock as a safety, replaced Jamie Gillen with Jordan Stout at punter. There's our punter mention. You got the fullback, I got the punter. Stout, also the punter that Harbaugh drafted to replace whatever longtime punter Baltimore had before him. I forget.
Right.
They also added Patrick Ricard. So just like such a hardball. Today they signed Daniel Faalele to a 1 year depth, probably minimum contract as well. So he did everything we thought, right? He brought in a bunch of Baltimore people. This also kicks Joe Shane out of the like decision making chair. So I put them all the way up at two. I forget where you actually ended up having them. How do you feel about New York here?
I really liked what the Giants did. I had them at 14.
Okay.
Because I thought I was going to be too biased because Isaiah Likely was one of my favorite free agents this offseason, and I like that he's going with a coach that knows him because this coach had him when he didn't quite get to see the field as much. So I feel like there could be
Right.
a big unlocking of Isaiah Likely. Patrick Ricard is a nice addition. I like, you mentioned Harbaugh's creating his thing that he won a Super Bowl, right? He's had
Hmm.
that success. I mean, he had Lamar Jackson, obviously, but this Giants offense, if they stay healthy on the offensive line, has plenty of talent, plenty of firepower, and so it looks like they did some nice things there. And so I had them at 14. I have no problem moving them higher. I was trying to gauge how much the needle moved for me, but I think that they were in my tier. I think that was like just like smart moves, like a little bit
Hmm.
more than just doing things, but definitely doing smart moves. So I have no problem moving them higher than 14.
If we
Do
can
we
put them
have?
five, if we can put them at five,
Okay.
because I had them all the way up at two,
Yeah. Five feels
then
like
we can do. You have the Ravens a little higher than me. I'm happy to have the Ravens at six,
okay.
and then seven and eight. I'm happy to do like Chiefs, and then we can choose between the Saints and Niners
Okay.
to round that out. And we'll talk about the Chiefs, Saints, Niners next. But if we can get the Giants at five here, I'll give you the couple teams you have a little bit higher than me. I'll
Okay.
push the Saints down a little
I
bit.
think that's a fair trade. I
Okay.
was hoping my Lions would still stick in the top eight here. But
Nah, not quite. Not quite. You look
Cade
at
Mays
Taylor
doesn't.
Decker and you send him packing after all that, and you can't be in the top graphic for me at that point. Um, yeah, when
Um,
when
I
uh
was
when
I
Campbell
was
went up and said he wants Sewell to maybe move to the left side, I was just like, that's just so unnecessary. Like I get it, and like the Bucks did it, and I'm sure Sewell can do it, but like, or you could just keep him at right tackle and try something else at left tackle, especially. But I
yeah.
digress.
I think we talked enough about the Ravens already, but I would just
Yeah.
like to mention that I had them way lower than this before the Trey Hendrickson pickup. But when we talk about a team upgrading where they need to, defense wasn't bad, but they could not rush the passer last year. And so what do? They bring in one of the best options available at pass rusher, and so that's a huge deal. You mentioned Anthony Weaver, and for what it's worth, Mina Kimes and Mike Golick Jr. really like their new offensive line coach, Dwayne Ledford. So there's another
He's the one from
coaching.
Atlanta, right? He
Mhm.
was the Falcons O-line coach, and that
Correct.
was from all the that's right, and that was from all those years, the peak Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, Jake Matthews years.
Right.
Matt Bergeron, going from Hennessy to Dahlman to Newsel, um, Elijah Wilkinson had good years under the. So he is a good offensive line coach. That is for certain. And I
But
should
that
say,
gave
while
them,
we're mentioning, what's that?
I was going to say that saves them a little bit because, like you said earlier, they don't have a center. They lost Tyler Lindenbaum, which is why I wanted
Yeah.
to bury them. Not that they needed to. He would have been expensive, but still, like it's hard to let one of the best position go in any
And
position.
then just like not do anything with it,
Right.
right? Like the only center move they made was Danny Pinter, who
Right.
was the one like Colts mid round draft pick that they opted to not just make a long term starter once his time came because he just did not work out. Um, and they get John Simpson, and now they're looking at okay Voorhees or Emery Jones playing right guard, and then Pinter is like holding a placeholder at center until they do something. But just to not have done anything, like not even like Lloyd Cushenberry or something was strange. But yeah, Hendrickson and then the coaching staff gets Baltimore at six.
For sure.
And then Saints, Niners, Chiefs. Which of those three teams do you want to put at 7 and 8 here?
Um,
Which two of those three teams?
I think I had the Saints just outside the top eight. You had them at five. I think the Saints need
Yep.
to be probably at seven, and then we got to have the Chiefs round out the top eight.
Okay. Since you have the Chiefs above the Saints, do you want the Chiefs above them?
I don't know because
Okay.
I have the Chiefs probably
You
higher
just
just
have
because
them one spot
I
above.
love I love Kenneth Walker, and punishing Seattle for letting him go. So, but I that may not be the logical. I might be just voting with my heart. So they get 8 instead of 7.
Oh yeah, are you
This
punishing
is the
the
mental
Seahawks?
turmoil, folks, that
I
we go
hadn't
through.
I hadn't noticed that you're punishing the Seahawks for Kenneth Walker.
Oh, I
We'll get
punished
to it.
this.
We'll get to it later. All right. So here's our top eight: Rams, Panthers, Chargers, Raiders, Giants, Ravens, Saints, Chiefs. So again, this is off-season ranking. These are how these teams are faring through free agency moves and coaching changes. We'll update these with the draft. So depending on what these teams do in the draft, right? What holes they fill in, what things were like if the Ravens turn around and take Spencer Fano in the first round because he falls to them and they say we're going to play him at center, then I'm like, ooh boy, like two, right? Like this is
Right.
huge. I don't need to go down more offense. I've got a lot of offensive line machinations
You really
in this
have.
pod
You really
already,
have.
and
Yep.
I love it. But that's why the pod's also already been 56 minutes, and nobody else is watching at this point. But it's for us, so that's why we do it. Um, so we'll update this, but this is what our top eight looks like, and yet, and we put the Chiefs here, and we haven't actually even talked about them. So let's do that now, Josh. The Kansas City Chiefs. Let me just run through the logistics of what happened, then you can tell me how you felt about it. So
Hmm.
on a coaching standpoint, they let Matt Nagy walk. They talked him up as this guy needs to be a head coach. He should absolutely be a head coach, but we're not going to hire him back because we want Eric Bieniemy to come back as our OC, which is what happened. And then in free agency, they replaced Brian Cook with Aloy Gilman, replaced Trent McDuffie with Kader Kohu, replaced Jalen Watson with Kyer Elam, replaced Derek Noddy slash Jerry Tillery with Kyrus Tonga, replaced Isaiah Pacheco with Kenneth Walker, released Jawan Taylor, who actually, breaking news as of today, signed with the Falcons because Caleb McGarry retired. Um, and then the Chiefs also lost Leo Chenal and Charles Omenihu. So I had them just a bit lower because their roster did get worse defensively,
Yep.
but I actually had them at 10 originally. Ended up putting them at 12 because of Bieniemy and Walker specifically. But their defense did get worse, but it got cheaper like it needed to. They couldn't pay everybody the way they were getting paid. And like from the defensive backfield, this is what they do, right? Spags and that defensive coaching staff and that front office find the diamonds in the rough. It's going to be such a good twist of the knife for the Bills if the Chiefs turned Kyer Elam into a player after the Bills took him and he was just
Yep.
nothing for them.
Yep.
So talk to me about the Chiefs. Why'd you have them up here at eight?
Yeah, they definitely get the star treatment a little bit in the sense that any other team trades Trent McDuffie and loses Jalen Watson in their position. If everything else is the same, any other team does that, I definitely knock them for that. But the Chiefs, I just don't knock for that sort of thing, like you mentioned. Like they got something for McDuffie. They got cheaper where they needed to get cheaper. I do like Aloy Gilman. He's not at that level, but
Hmm.
I do like him. Kader who can be fine. And again, under Spags, like you never know. So I didn't dock them as much defensively. I already mentioned I do like Ken Walker quite a bit, and then with re-signing Kelsey and bringing Eric Bieniemy, they're getting the gang back together. So they're gonna try.
Yeah.
I feel like they're gonna try to get back to what was part of their Super Bowl dynasty for a while, and they haven't had a 1,000 yard rusher in a while. And I would bet some money that Kenneth Walker will get there this year, barring injury. Like I think that most teams, I don't think. I mean, I am. I already had the Lions, or the Texans up there because of a running back. So I'm the running back advocate here, but um,
Someone's got
probably a
to
little
be.
bit too much of a boost that I gave him for the running back. But yeah, they're the Chiefs, so the moves they make look better than other teams, and for better or for worse. I think Tonga's fine. The way where I settled with Kyrus Tonga because he played for the Vikings for a while. He played for the Patriots last year. He's a good run stuffing
Yeah.
middle of the D line guy. He's not elite. He's not the top tier of anything, but he's good. And when you put him alongside Chris Jones, you put him alongside of on the Chiefs, he's probably going to be better, even more so than he was last year with the Patriots. So that's definitely still a net positive, I think, even though their defense, like you said, on the whole got a little bit worse. So um, when you factor in all that stuff, even if it's favoritism towards the Chiefs, they probably still got a little bit better or a little bit, more efficient roster wise going into a draft now where they have an extra pick because they got that from the McDuffie deal, right? They got one of the Rams first round
Hmm.
picks this
Hmm.
year for that. So we know they draft well. So that feels smart to you don't ever want to lose a Trent McDuffie, but if you get something for him, then you know, the good teams, the good organizations do that before it's too late, before they have overpay for an extension when he doesn't deserve it, whatever. I don't know. So yeah, the Chiefs are doing Chief things, but Ken Walker's gonna be great. So
Yeah, it's funny. We reward the Rams for adding Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie, and for the Chiefs, we're like smart, move on from Trent McDuffie and Jalen. And it's the way those two teams coach and value those positions, right? The whole thing with the Chiefs, it's like when the Packers were really good at just drafting mid-round offensive linemen and just
Yep.
like getting versatile pieces and just plugging them in where they had holes, and then they were always a good unit, even if they never had a star.
Right.
After Bakhtiari, and the Chiefs have proven they want to do that. They draft these corners later. McDuffie was their highest drafted like defensive back, but L'Jarius Sneed and Charvarius Ward being an undrafted free agent from another team, and then when it's time for those guys to get paid, they let them go get paid, and they Jamari Connor and
Yeah.
Noah Williams and these day three guys. Josh Williams was a fourth round pick who played a little bit outside, but was a special teamer. And you know, McDuffie's getting market setting cornerback contract when his best position with Kansas City was in the slot. And now Kader Kohu is going to play the slot for 1.8.
Yeah.
And that and Brian Cook is getting 13 point something to go wherever, and Aloy Gilman's getting 8, right? So when you're a team that needs to work around the edges, right? And people made fun of the Jalen Moore signing last year, and he ended up being a backup. Well, now they are able to move on from Jawan Taylor because Moore is there, kind of ready to play right tackle. So, just really, really smart moves all the way around, and like the timing of when the Chiefs stopped being like a good offense and connecting that to when Bieniemy left and Matt Nagy came back to be the offensive coordinator is just like so clear. They're like, man,
Yeah.
you're adding Bieniemy and you're giving him a running back that he wants as a running back guy, like.
Yeah.
And the offensive line is, I think, healthy again. Between like Mattia, like kind of settling in at guard, and just if Joshua Simmons can be there and be good to go, like he proved his play is good enough. So, yeah, it was a good offseason for the Chiefs. So I ended up bumping them down to 12 because like that's a lot of snaps that they lost on defense, right? Leo
Yeah.
Chenal, Charles Omenihu. You mentioned Tonga, like they always just have this guy who's just a plugger playing next to Chris Jones, so
Right.
that works. Um, we'll see who kind of steps up defensively because at least those are just rotational guys for the most part. And the DBs they've had guys in the hopper, so they're ready to go. All right, so that's our top 8. Let's fill in the gaps here on this next page. So we have the Saints to pull down, the Lions to pull down, the Texans to pull down, the Niners to pull down. Talk to me about the 49ers. So you have at
Well, we
14,
have
and
we
I
have
had at 7.
The Saints are at 7 already, so we're good. We're good on the
Oh yeah,
Saints.
we didn't pull down the. Yep. All right. Good on you. So
Oh
we
yeah,
have.
Lions, Texans, Niners, and then we both have the Titans right in there at 11, 12 range. So
Yep. Let me show everybody. This is where we're at. All right. Here's
are
the
you show
9 through 16 that me and
are you
Josh
showing the
have.
9 through 16 graphic right now?
Yes, I am. Look at the
People are gonna be like,
Jets
oh
right there in the
no.
middle. Look at those. Look at those Jets
Oh, the Jets. I can't believe you didn't like the Jets.
and the Browns. Mm,
You didn't like the Browns?
mm. There's a lot going on here for you, Josh. Uh, Whoever's watching at an hour and 4 minutes and now seeing what our 9 through 16 looks like, we got some stuff to sort out here. But let's do the easy ones first. We have
Yeah,
to
that's a good idea.
wait. Who do we have to pull down? The Lions, the 49ers,
Lions,
and the
Lions,
Texans
Niners, and Texans. Yes.
are going to be somewhere in here because I didn't even have the Niners or Texans in this group originally. Now, like I said before, my cutoff for like good positive off season was like my top 14. So Dallas was in here for me, the Falcons, the Titans, the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Broncos. Now, you don't have the Broncos in here. You don't have the
Nope.
Patriots in here.
Nope.
You don't have the Falcons in here. So we're going to have to sort this out.
It's gonna be tricky.
But let's start with somewhere the Texans and somewhere the Lions and somewhere the 49ers are going to take up
So,
space.
Mike, I guess my question is, did my Cade Mays stuff get you to get the Lions over the Niners? If not, I'm okay with putting the Niners next because I was a big Mike Evans guy, and I think that's a really great signing. That was almost a needle mover. I don't know how much they did outside of that as well, but I feel good about the Niners going at 9. That's only 5 spots ahead of where I had them.
Yeah,
That's a pretty
49ers at
decent.
9 sounds good to me. Yep.
Yep.
Mike Evans, Osa Digizua, they needed reliable pass catchers and they needed improved pass rush in free agency, and they did that. Um, and then they go and get Raheem Morris to be defensive coordinator with Robert
Mhm.
Saleh leaving.
Yep.
And he's not as good of a defensive coordinator in terms of schematics and play calling as Saleh for sure. But we've seen the Niners when they kind of go to an unknown, or even a guy like kind of outside the circle, like it does not go well for any of their coaching spots, whether it's special teams or defensive coordinator or OC under Shannon. And Raheem Morris just feels like he's like of the family, right? Like
Yep.
been under McVay, been around a long time. I'm sure there's a tie to Dad Shanahan at some point. So like it just
Right.
feels like it's gonna work and be like pretty stable. And the way they have to build up with younger guys feels like a good fit. So yeah, 49ers at 9. That was why all the reasons I had him at 7. So I like him here at 9. Mike Evans on here is super cool, man. And
That's awesome.
if they go ahead and bring back Juwan Jennings, like this pass catching group is out of nowhere, like really good. Because then you're not relying on Pearsall to be a healthy number
Correct.
2 all year. You're not relying on Mike Evans to just be prime
Yeah.
Mike Evans right away. I think they still need one more guy, and that's why they got Christian Kirk, right? Like he can
Yeah.
play in a pinch.
Yep.
But I really think they need and can bring back Juwan Jennings, and I think they were just kind of waiting to see what everything was like for him in free agency. But he's still out there. There doesn't seem to be a huge market. So
Yeah.
with them letting Kendrick Bourne walk, I think bring back Juwan Jennings would be huge for the rest of this group.
Yep. Yep. No, 100%. I don't think we need to say anything else on the Niners. That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm more curious of, do you think the Lions can overtake your Broncos here?
Yeah, yeah. You know I don't love the Broncos, so we can.
Why did you have the is it Waddle based,
Yeah,
or
it's
is it
Waddle, man. It's Waddle, and I wanted to ask you for. Sorry, everybody. I'm copy pasting as we copy pasting as we go, and also apparently trying to speak and failing at that. So Waddle for me was the Broncos brought back their key defensive piece, and obviously losing John Franklin Myers. That's a good player, but it was
yeah,
kind of already written on the wall that they weren't going to be able to pay him with who else they paid on that
right?
defense. But they bring back two of the three linebackers from last season, including Alex Singleton, who's kind of the heart, the captain, the guy in
Justin
the middle of that
Strnad's coming
defense.
back. Yep.
Granada's coming back. He's going to get an increased role. Um, and offensively, like so the main thing they needed this offseason was just juice on offense. Whatever, if it was going to be running back, if it was going to be a tight end, if it was going to be a wide receiver, they just needed somebody to provide some juice. And they went out and they went out and they got that in Waddle. So I was like, this is for a team that was an injured quarterback away from being in the Super Bowl to add this like Pro Bowl caliber player that we've seen be really integral in a high octane offense. And a guy for Bo Nix who Bo Nix doesn't throw the ball very far very well. I don't know if you know that. And if you remember Jalen Waddle's first seasons in Miami, before there was any version of a downfield passing attack with McDaniel, a guy that could just like drags and slants and screens and go crazy like that just seems like such a hand and glove fit. So for you, is it Waddle as a player doesn't get you excited? Because you have him low, don't you?
I
You have
have
the
him
Broncos
very
at
low.
21.
I
So was it Waddle the player or was it the compensation? Because they had to give like what a first, a third, and a fourth to get Waddle and a fourth, something like that, and then pay him obviously.
Right. No, no, I the Waddle actually moved him up quite a bit. I think when you mentioned the re-signing of the defensive players, um, I think that is more of a benefit than I gave them to. They were one of my teams that was so meh for most of the free agency cycle that
Hmm.
Waddle definitely moved the needle for them. I think I just had them too low initially. Because my write-up just says like, if I'm a Broncos fan, I'm excited at the aggressiveness. I don't care how expensive a player like Waddle is. He's shown that when Tyreek was out, he could be a lead receiver, and I think his style of a receiver complements Cortland Sutton nicely. And so I think that
Yes.
that is a good move for their offense. So that was a good addition by them and definitely got a lot of credit for me. I just had them so much lower because it was very meh to me for like the other things they did. Um, maybe not giving them enough credit for re-signing some of those defenders. So I have no problem with them up in this tier. And I think I was just kind of like, I mentioned to you pre-show, like I did too much of my research and rankings at the early start of this, and that was a move that didn't happen at the
Hmm.
first couple days of free agency. And so I was already kind of like, now my heart's set on the Broncos and being meh, and I didn't give Waddle his due, I suppose. So, um,
This is
but
why
you're
we
right.
scramble, man. Don't do any prep until 2 days before. You never know what's
That's
gonna happen. Uh,
that's right.
um, there's another
But
thing. Oh, I also really like what they did from a coaching standpoint. Like Davis Webb was really in the running for that
yeah.
Raiders job, and they went and they fired Lombardi, and
Mhm.
Peyton even gave up play calling to keep him in the building. I think that was such a smart move by them. Good forward thinking move, and a way to naturally like progress on the things the offense did last year
Right.
by getting a new voice, a little bit more power, and then just adding Waddle. I think is
Yeah.
just really good.
I
I will
think
say, for consensus sake, I would be willing to put them even behind the Texans. I think,
yeah.
unless you want to come off the Texans a little bit more, but if this was like
No, I like
Niners, Lions, Texans, Broncos,
yeah.
I think I could get with that.
Yeah, that feels good to me. I think that the biggest key is what you said about Bo Nix. Like Jalen Waddle on paper makes Bo Nix like 50% better than he was last
Hmm.
year. And so if you're riding with him next year and you've said this, we can win with this guy because if he didn't get hurt, we could have been in the Super Bowl, then absolutely. Because Waddle's the type of receiver he needs to like they should be pretty could be pretty dangerous offensively, actually.
Fans and fantasy players have been wondering for years why Peyton hasn't let this Marvin Mims thing really get unlocked. This like small, short but explosive player, and it's probably for Peyton because like he's just not good enough at those things, and now
Yeah.
he gets that guy
Yep.
in Waddle. So I think that's a part of the offense that's going to be unlocked.
For sure.
Um, so next, let's quickly go over the Titans and the who's the other
Cowboy
team we both have here, the
Cowboys.
Cowboys. Um, just teams that had good off seasons for me.
Yep.
The Titans I originally had at 11. They get Robert Saleh at head coach, Brian Daboll as OC. Like I like that even more than Robert Saleh as head coach, and I like Robert Saleh as head coach. And then Gus Bradley as DC, who Saleh just kind of looks up to, I think, as a mentor kind of guy. Free agency there replaced Kyrie Elam and Daryl Baker Jr. with Alante Taylor and Cordell Flott, like that. Replaced Van Jefferson with Wandale Robinson, kind of like that, especially for Brian Dable. Replaced Chigga with Dalen Bellinger. Replaced Johnny Hecker with Tommy Townsend, another punter mentioned.
Another punter.
Replaced Xavier Woods and with Tony Jefferson, Jahad Ward, Arden Key, Devontae Sweat, James Lynch, and Sebastian Joseph Day with Jacob Martin, Jermaine Johnson III, John Franklin Myers, Jordan Elliott, and Solomon Thomas. Just wanted to highlight how different the defensive front is. So Dayball kind of getting his guys on offense plus Cordell Flott, and then Salah getting like his version of a defensive front that he wants. Um, I think all wrapped up for me is just Titans did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. They did a good job. I was back and forth with them. Did they do enough to move the needle for me? Because by player names, I don't know if they did. But if you
Hmm.
start to, which is why they didn't make it into my top 10. But if you factor in prior relationships, like you mentioned, like Wandale Robinson wouldn't excite me going to another team. But if he's going there at the
This was where he had
request
to
of
go.
Brian Dable, now it's something, right? And
Yeah.
so I thought Jonathan Franklin Myers was a great pickup. I think Alante Taylor, Cordell Flott, like just like you mentioned, like those were really smart additions. So the Titans for me, they had smart additions and they had the quantity, right? This is a perfect
Hmm.
example of what I talked about at the beginning. Like it's hard to sift through what's just fluff and quantity. Um, the Titans had the quantity, so if they hit on more of them, then it's even better. But on top of that, they have guys that we like I feel like are definite upgrades to their team, and so they're building around their number one overall quarterback from last year, who had struggled in his rookie year, as you might expect a rookie to do. But now the team around him has gotten better for now, and so theoretically they're doing everything right. They're signing smart players, they're upgrading, they're trying to build off of more experience for Cam Ward. So yeah, I really liked what the Titans did. Um and it wasn't just because they had a lot of guys that they signed, I should say. So
Right. When it comes to Wandale Robinson, like think what Xavier Restrepo was at Miami for Cam Ward, and now it's Wandale Robinson.
yep,
I think that's what it's going to kind of look like and be kind of that
yep.
comfort zone security blanket. And then I said this on Twitter, and I had a Jets fan in my mentions, and we'll move this into you talking about the Jets and why they're up here. I tweeted that okay, it's hilarious that Saleh goes to Tennessee, and then New York has this 1 year of Aaron Glenn and having Saleh's players. And then both teams, both coaches go out and they're like, we're going to reshape the defense, the defensive front, the whole defense. And I just thought Salah and the Titans did a way better job than the Jets, who like got good players, but clearly short-sighted, like older players, 1 year mercenary types. And the Titans got these like what feels just more like more sound moves, more foundational pieces, whereas the Jets were like, let's just spend money at a problem. So you have the Jets here at what is that,
Yep.
11? I have them down here at 25, which is actually less about the roster, more about the coaching, which we'll talk about. But they replaced Quincy Williams with Demario Davis, replaced Justin Fields with Geno Smith, replaced John Simpson with Dylan Parham, replaced Tony Adams with Minka Fitzpatrick, replaced Michael Clemens and Jermaine Johnson with Joseph Asai and Kingsley Enikbare, signed Nashawn Wright, David Onyemata, and Tavondre Sweat. When you just look at the names, the free agents, like, and you just think about them as players, I do like it. But you look at the contracts too that kind of went along with it, and in
Yep.
some cases some trades, and it's just if it just feels so desperate. Like it has such a different feeling attached to it than anything else. But I do think once I put them there at 25 and really wrote all the names down, I was like, that probably is too low. But I
Right.
still don't know if I can get them here in this top half of our group.
I have a comment on my Google Doc where my notes are on the New York Jets, and it says, I've had them all over my rankings. This is the team I've tweaked the most.
Hmm.
I've had them down at 25, 26, and then I had them up flirting with the top 10, and then I ended up with 11. I just had to stop it somewhere. Um, and they were another hard team with that quantity over quality thing for sure, because they did bring in so many players. I did not look at the contracts as much here, so I
Yeah.
think that the way you laid that out, I think that should be a big factor in swaying them downward. I don't think I'm not going to fight for them here in this, even in this necessarily this tier now that we've gone through most of it. Um, but where I landed on the Jets is that they are trying something. I don't necessarily like what they're trying because I think what they're trying to do is to have a team that's competitive enough to save Aaron Glenn's job and a defense that's back to being respectable, and then trying to build going for. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's 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 kind of like you said, it's kind of a sad attempt. Like what are they actually trying? But then I go back and I watch Joseph Asai. I'm like, I do like him as a player overall.
Hmm.
Demario Davis still kind of has it. I went back and watched
Yeah.
some of his stuff from last year, and he is, was he 37 now or something like that?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I've like, man, I'm gonna be turning 38 in a month, and I wish I could run, you know, 5% as fast as Demario Davis.
The
Like,
the average person's version of Demario Davis, who's just getting younger as he gets
right.
older.
So I because I did the same thing you did. You had him down at 25, and then you look
Hmm.
at the names, you're like, I can't have him there. And I said on the last free agent one, I was like, I wanted the Vikings to look at Breece Hall. We need some running back help. And like, since I'm the running back advocate, I guess for your podcast family, that's my new title.
It's no, it's literally everybody but me. Everybody gets
Okay.
on here and it's just like running back, running back, running back. And yeah,
And I
just
was like, oh,
so over.
they got him back, and I still believe Geno Smith is gonna be better than he was last year. So even that doesn't feel that terrible because Justin Fields didn't work out. So then I'm like, well, they actually did maybe knock
Hmm.
their roster up a little bit and have a chance to be kind of decent, but then again, they're the Jets, and it's really hard to think that they're going to turn this into anything. So I think what they're trying to do. Oh, they also traded for Minka Fitzpatrick. I forgot about that. I
Hmm.
had that written
Hmm.
down. Like that's not nothing either. And so I don't know. They've literally moved back and forth on my rankings. So I think
Here,
somewhere in the middle makes sense.
here's the nail in the coffin, and it's funny I say that because he is the Grim Reaper of offensive lines. Frank Reich coming in
Mm,
to be their offensive coordinator is a disaster. Like it's a disaster, man. He goes to the Colts from the Eagles, and they're this like great offensive line, and they just immediately start falling apart when he gets in the building. The moment he leaves, they're good again, even though they have all the same players and they're like all 5 years older. He goes to Carolina, who has this young ascending offensive line, and they spent money on Robert Hunt, and then they were just a mess for the 8 weeks that he was the head coach, and then they were brilliant as soon as he left and Canals comes in.
yep.
And the Jets have this young building offensive line between these two first round tackles. My guy, Josh Myers, gets an extension, right? By the way, throwback to last year's free agency power rankings when you had Hassan Reddick really high, and he's currently not with a team, and then You and everybody, you and everybody, the had Dahlman really high, and like,
Yeah,
and meanwhile I had Josh Myers really high, and I was like, I don't get it with Dahlman. Meanwhile, Dahlman got paid, had a really good year, but where did it end up? He's retired, and now the Bears need another offensive lineman. Meanwhile, the Jets have extended Josh Myers, so like,
there you go.
just want to give everybody
There
one,
you
right?
go.
So,
Victory
anyways,
lap. Victory lap.
um, Josh Myers, baby, never left the island. Um,
To your to
What
your
were we even
Frank.
talking about? Frank Reich.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's going to ruin this offensive line, which just makes me
yeah,
depressed. So, but I do think I didn't give enough credit to the players and the roster construction because yeah, but it is what you said. It's
yeah.
this is they're going for a proof of concept. Aaron Glenn, we're going to give you enough just at the line players for you to install your defense and show us it's not actually the worst defense in the league because it was
Right.
last year. And if you can at least be a good defense, you get to keep your job as we try to turn this offense around.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you will be fired. But Frank Reich coming in and the whole thing with how they hired their new defensive coordinator because actually the OC thing, whoever the OC was last season from the Lions, or maybe they got the guy from the Broncos. I always get mixed up which team did it. Anyways,
I can't remember either.
he was gonna keep him. He was gonna keep his OC, and he was like, but I'm going to bring in another experienced OC to also be on the staff. And then it was I'm going to bring someone in to actually be the OC and you'll stay on or they'll be the play caller and you'll be the OC. And then it was like I'm taking all of your duties away. And then the guy was just like I'm just out, man. You can't make up your mind on what my job is going to be.
Yeah.
And like the only thing that has changed is time and the meetings you're having with the owner. So I'm just out.
Right.
And now Frank Reich is just in charge of the offense, and that's just disgusting.
I
Um,
To your Frank Reich points, I was looking at. I was like, well, how is this going to fit? I did find this only proves your point because I found an article that someone had written is like Geno Smith's good at throwing the routes that Frank Reich likes to have his receivers run in his offense, and it was like digs and outs, and I'm like, okay, yeah, lots of teams run those routes. Like this is not, and I don't. It wasn't necessarily like a national person or something. I'm not trying to rag on the article writer, but I think they were trying to look for something to like, yeah, this is kind of a connection here.
You
I was
got
like,
you got
that's
to
a
dig
pretty,
deep.
that's a pretty thin connection. So I don't, it's not really getting me hyped up about the Frank Reich Geno Smith pairing, but who knows?
It's a disaster, man. Okay, so we're not having the Jets here at the top. Um, the teams that I feel like I gotta have at the bottom of this group because I have the screen up for everybody. So we have the Niners, the Lions, the Texans, the Broncos, the Cowboys, the
Yeah,
Titans.
I gotta see what you say about the Patriots.
So the Patriots, this is where I can see where we're kind of started to differ on what we're doing here. And for me, this is I even did say it's probably too high for status quo, but Vrabel gets some Titans and Titans like players in. They add Elijah Vera Tucker and they swap out Romeo Dobbs for Stephon Diggs. And it's a Super Bowl team that kept its coaching staff together. It has its coordinators. Doesn't look like those guys are going to go anywhere. Dobbs, I think, is the type of player they need, and also just a more stable player, obviously, than what Stephon Diggs was giving them. They also
Yeah,
went from Jalen Hawkins to Kevin Byard, placed Kalavion Chase on with Draymond Jones, Austin Hooper with Julian Hill, Jack Gibbons with KJ Britt. So they didn't get better at every spot, but they got Titans-y players, right? Vrabel-y players. Elijah Vera Tucker, if he's healthy, is awesome.
yeah.
And I'm excited for Jared Wilson to play center. So 10 is probably too high because I just think they just like towed the line and didn't get any worse. But if we're comparing them to putting them up against the Colts and the Browns, who you still have in this group who we haven't talked about yet, then like gross, man. I'm taking the Patriots all day.
That's fair, and I think maybe they get some credit for their season last year. I guess I don't. I might be wrong on Dobbs, but I don't see that as the big move
Or
that
Packers 8.
I know I hesitate. I feel like I can't say that stuff as a Vikings fan, but I'm like, I don't know if he's going to go in there and really add that much more to the receiving core. I could be 100% wrong on it. And then you mentioned it was a lot of status quo, but they did get certain types of players in there. Obviously I like the Vera Tucker pickup, but outside of that, I was kind of just like, okay, so they can run it back. They're a great team. This is nothing, no reflection on how I think they're going to do. I just said if their big move is Romeo Dobbs, like I don't know if I'm at that point to
Hmm.
give him that 4-year deal. So I even wrote in my notes, I was like, if you can sell me on Dobbs, then I have no problem launching them up quite a bit here. Because,
Well, if you think about what their wide receiver group was last year, right?
yeah,
It was like Booty and Mac Hollins, who are just your like go deep guys. You have Pop Douglas, who's like your underneath slot guy, and then Diggs is like the route runner, right? The like got to get open in a big moment kind of guy. And while Dobbs isn't as shifty of a route runner, he runs those routes and he's big and he has sure hands.
yeah,
And if you're getting 5, 6 years younger, you're getting healthier, and you're getting somebody who doesn't have the same off-field concerns, then that's huge. My question for you next was going to be, and I know what your answer is because you have the Colts up here. Would you rather have Alec Pierce for 28.5 million, or would you rather have Romeo Dobbs for 17? And I would rather have Dobbs for 17, especially because the Colts not only had to give Alec Pierce 28.5 to stay, they had to move on from Michael Pittman and then a lot of other good players that they couldn't spend money on this offseason. So never mind the Patriots being at 10 because they're clearly not going to be that. The Patriots versus the Colts at 15. I much prefer what the Patriots did because I had the Colts down at 28.
yeah,
It was because they had to move on from Pittman, they had to move on from Zaire Franklin, they had to move on from Kwity Paye and Samson Ebukam and good players. They lose Nick Cross, they lose Braden Smith, which I was actually fine with. But like they had to lose a lot of good players to pay Alec Pierce and pay Daniel
yeah,
Jones. So I didn't want to have him up here.
yeah. I think that's fair. Wait till you hear my write up on the Colts because this is where my tier
Give it to me.
breaks.
Give it to
This
me.
is where my tier breaks really failed me because I said I literally have this typed up. They were my team 32 until I made my tiers. They were my team 32 until I made my
Okay, they're
tiers.
getting pushed down.
And then yeah, so I'm not going to fight for him. I'm still not sold on Dobbs. And I think I might like Pierce better. I think you're right about the cost though.
I like
The
Pierce
the
better as a
reason
player, yes. Hmm.
the reason why I had the Colts up here is because I don't think I've announced my tier, but this my middle tier with all this murkiness was teams that are at least trying something get some credit. And so at first I buried the Colts because I was like, I don't think Daniel Jones coming off Achilles is going to be effective. I don't think Pierce can be a number one receiver. I did just trade for him in one of our dynasty leagues not too long ago, a few weeks ago. But that's just because I think he's getting a lot of targets. Like that's a
Mm.
fantasy specific thing. From an offense production standpoint or offense winning game standpoint, I don't think Pierce can be that wide receiver one either. Um, but I was kind of like, well, if they think so, maybe. I don't know. So I I was like, you know what? I made the tier teams that are trying something. It's very uncertain, but they're trying something. I was like, to their credit, they're putting their money where their mouth is and they're saying like we're going to do this. I don't think it's going to end up well for them, but they said they're going to do this. So um they were thinly up here because kind of I was like I was rewarding that aggressiveness. I was struggling with that. So yeah, I'm not going to fight for him here at 15. That's for sure.
Yeah, I love the aggressiveness, like aggressively putting your quarterback with the broken leg and letting him continue to play until he ruptures his Achilles. I love that
Yeah.
aggressiveness. That's good. That's
And
good stuff.
right, I think the reason I had him at 32 initially too is because they were like, he might be ready for week one or ready for training camp week one. I was like, what? No, he's not. Like, this guy, his legs are falling off. He's had a broken leg in his career. He's had an ACL and now he has an Achilles. Like,
Neck injury. Daniel Jones is the
what
new
is he
Kirk
gonna?
Cousins because he just gets these teams in a bind, man. I don't know how he does it. I don't, he's so good in contract years of just like, I'm gonna corner you with just enough good football, but also just like somehow, I don't know, I'm so nice. I'm such a good hang that you get distracted and you don't prepare for anything else that then you have to pay me all the money I want. And it's a little different than the way Kirk did it, but just like all-time bag getters, Daniel Jones is in that tier.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
All right, so the other team we have to talk about here real quick is the Atlanta Falcons. And the Falcons for me were that team that I was like, they got the second best coach on the market. And I feel like everybody, including myself, forgot that along the way
Yeah,
because their roster did get worse.
yeah,
Kirk Cousins becomes Tua. Tyler Algier becomes Brian Robinson Jr. Darnell Mooney becomes Jahan Dotson. David Onyemata and Deshaun Hand, um, or David Onyemata becomes Deshaun Hand. Leonard Floyd and Arlo Ebiketie become Samson Ebukam, Cam Thomas, and Aziz Ojolari. Austin Hooper leaves. Elijah Wilkinson, D. Alford, and Caden Ellis all leave. So like their roster got worse,
Yeah,
right?
for
But
sure.
this is Stefanski coming in and saying like, okay, our finances are in crap because of the Kirk Cousins deal, so we're just gonna have to eat it. Meanwhile, I'm going to put together a good coaching staff. I retain Jeff Ulrich, who did a good job with the Falcons last year. I didn't think that was going to happen. I wanted them to just bring Schwartz over from Cleveland, and I wonder if one bad year from Ulrich and Schwartz is in Atlanta in 2027. But they bring Bill Callahan back to be his offensive line coach with a group that is already mostly made, right? They have 4 or 5 starters returning from last season, and I mentioned it earlier, but Caleb McGarry, who did not play a snap last year, he retires, and within an hour, Jawan Taylor is being signed. So like a guy that can be at the line, play right tackle for them, be at the line literally and figuratively. So even that kind of a shrewd move, like I don't want to drop them out of the top 16 because I just think it's easy for us to see all the the messiness of like the whole GM slash
Yeah,
president of football stuff that's going on. Like it all got a little messy, but at the end of the day, the Falcons, who we don't always think about in terms of being like the team of instability,
right.
because the coaches that they have only become disasters in the eyes of fantasy football players, right? But like 6 years of Dan Quinn, 3 years of Arthur Smith, 2 years of Raheem Morris, like it's starting to become a turnstile there. So like getting Stefanski, multiple time coach of the year winner, good offensive mind, like survived in Cleveland for as long as he did because he's just so steady handed. Like I think Stefanski, even with all the messiness of it, plus Matt Ryan, plus Ian Cunningham, plus the way they are slowly kind of putting this roster the way they needed to be to start off things, I think makes a lot of sense. I think Tua for $1 million under Stefanski with a good offensive line and big wide receivers when you don't know what Michael Penix is going to be like, I think that's a good move, you know? So
Mhm.
I think I think this makes a lot of sense for Atlanta. So I mean I know I have New England above them. If it would make you
Yeah.
feel better, because I don't know where you have I forget where you have Atlanta versus New England, but
I
I would
think
even put Atlanta at 15 and New England at 16 if that helped you.
that would make me feel a little bit better, yes. I
All right.
would put Atlanta before New England in that regard. Yeah, I buried them. Where did I have them? I had them at 24. And I had them, the roster definitely got worse, like you mentioned. I was gonna have them lower, but I think, as a fellow team that's got a savvy deal for a quarterback on the vet minimum, it's so funny because everyone's just out on Tua, and then when you only have to pay him $1 million to be a backup or potentially your starter if he's better than your young guy, it's like, oh, now all of a sudden that makes a lot of sense, right?
The
And
the
what are the
Peter
what are the
Parker
odds?
glasses meme. Hmm.
Yeah, and what are the odds that they both are left-handed quarterbacks? Like even that thing, that's not a reason for anything, but that is kind of interesting that, like whichever one is in there, there's that. But yeah, I thought they got some credit for me because we still don't know. Penix's sample size is really small and he's hurt all the time. So you need somebody. They needed to do something in the QB room, and so a cheap Tua Tagovailoa is a good idea. The roster did get worse, but Kevin Stefanski, I think he does carry a lot of weight. And you're right, we did forget about him because he was in Cleveland. Um, and it'd be so interesting to see. We'll never know, but it'd be so interesting to see the documentary about like what
Oh
his
my God.
thoughts were with the whole Deshaun Watson contract and all the
Yep.
stuff in Cleveland. Like, how much did he have a part in that? Because optically, to me, as a complete outsider with no semblance of knowledge of that, it definitely felt like this is what I was handed, and I did a really good job with it, which speaks to his coaching ability, right? I don't know
Yep.
how much of it was him, you know, because I would have had a hard time supporting that Deshaun Watson contract. I can't imagine what that was like for like, wait a second, I'm the head coach. I'm gonna get questions about this all the time, and we have this fully guaranteed contract to this guy who's a bad person on top of the fact that he can't play football anymore. And you're gonna so did he handle that really well? Probably, all things considered, so So yeah,
Even
I
just
think the
the regular day to day of being the Browns head coach, like, is already bad enough
right,
on top of all
right.
that. Yeah,
The only other thing I'll say about the Browns though, and oh, we're not even talking about the Browns. You have them at 32. That's hilarious.
they're awful. They're terrible. It's a mess. It's so bad. We can talk about them later. We don't have to talk about the Browns right now.
All right.
Save it for the end when no one's watching.
All right.
Um,
Okay.
do you want to
Yeah.
defend them? Do you want to defend them to be above the Patriots and at 16?
No, no, no. I don't need to keep them here at 16. I was just gonna say that, they lost some O linemen. They did replenish. They got Elton Jenkins. They got Tevin Jenkins. They got some other guys. They have
But
nine total
Tevin
picks.
Jenkins, come on,
They have they have
stop it,
nine
stop
picks
it, Tevin
upcoming and
Jenkins.
two in the first round this year.
That's
So
not
they
what we're
didn't
here to talk about. That's not what we're here to talk about.
You're right. You're right. Fine.
Tevin Jenkins. Sorry, you got me all hyped up talking about Tevin Jenkins. Like that's gonna be helpful. Goodness gracious, Tevin Jenkins. Um, you want to do the Browns? Let's do the Browns. Let's talk about the Browns right now. Here
No, we
we
don't
go.
have to do the
Let me
Browns.
scroll. Let me
I don't
scroll
have any
down.
I don't have
Let me
anything
s-
else. I don't have anything else. They replenished the offensive line they lost basically. So I don't know how I added them at 16. What
the,
did I say?
the Browns and Tevin Jenkins. Their head coach missed the coaches meeting at the big meeting of coaches, and then he missed the picture because he was getting a haircut.
Monken was?
Yeah, they they were having the annual league meeting, the owners meetings that they do, and he, you look and they take a picture of all the coaches who all wear the same array of colors of light blue into a light purple into a lilac with some sort of slacks. They all wear the same clothes basically on accident, but it's on purpose. And they take a big group photo, and one coach isn't in it this year, and it's Todd Monken. It's because he was getting a haircut. And the reason he missed the picture is because he missed the meeting that they were having among themselves because they take the picture after.
Oh my God.
Now he said in a press conference today they moved the meeting time, but like brother, like they either didn't care enough about you to let you know, or you're not aware enough to be sitting in the waiting room for your haircut and say, "Oh, they moved the meeting." By the way, like he doesn't have that much hair, man. Like how far away did you go to get this haircut? Or how close, no pun intended, how close were you cutting it to the meeting to get your haircut? You're like, I'll be in and out of here in 30 minutes, and then I'll scoot over there in 2 minutes for the meeting. You don't want to get there early and like, I don't know, be prepared. I don't know, man. He's the
Ah,
Browns. They
that's
made
the
people
most.
take exams to be the head coach. Like he was the head coach by default.
Yes. Yeah.
Zion
All right.
Johnson, $17 million a year. Elton Jenkins, the Packers put you at center because they didn't want you at guard anymore, and now you're
No, because they needed a center because they lost,
well, they
what's
paid
his
Sean
face?
Ryan $11 million a year to be their center instead. So I think they were happy with that trade-off.
All right, the haircut thing got me because I I read an article that someone was talking up Monken like he would they was kind of by default, but he was like the guy for the job too. So I might have
The
gotten
guy for the
confused
job because he
away.
was the only one that took it. He
As a
actually
better
wrote the essay they made everybody do. Everybody else was like, I'm not going to write an essay. Everyone pulled out of that interview. It was it was him, Schwartz, and my guy Shieldhouse. I don't know why Shieldhouse really wanted that job. I wonder if he's from Ohio. Someone send me
oh.
$20 if I Google Nate Shieldhouse right now and he's from Ohio, and that's the only reason he was going to take the job. Let's
Well,
see.
as a language arts teacher, I kind of respect that he took the time to write his essay for
Yeah, he probably just wanted to flex the old muscles. He was probably like, let me
yeah, that's a kind
from
of
okay, no. He's born in Iowa, went to high school in Missouri, went to Illinois for college. Let's see. What was this? Will this tell me what he got his degree in? I'm gonna figure this out. All right, everybody, I'm gonna figure this out
well,
and
in the
see
meantime, audience, the Browns are not making it into the top half
why the
here.
heck Shieldhouse wanted this job. But anyways, the
Does that mean my
Browns,
Vikings
Tevin
get to hop in
Jenkins.
here at 17 for Kyler Murray?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. IMF it.
You had them
Oh,
at
should
50.
we? Wow, we're the only show in the world who can go an hour 40 minutes and technically have the Cowboys listed and not talk about them.
Oh wow, that's true.
The Cowboys are getting the 13th spot, and it's just because they were my
Okay.
last team in terms of good offseason. Um, they upgrade at safety, Jalen Thompson. That's nice. They keep Javonte Williams. They keep George Pickens. Although I didn't love the way they did that, they need to extend him, get
Right.
that cap hit down. but overall, with the money they created by moving on from Parsons, right? They trade for Rashad Gary. Kobe Durant's good depth on at corner. They need to do something at linebacker. That's still rough. But then the upgrade of Eberflus to Christian Parker, what we think Christian Parker can be as a defensive coordinator, as kind of the next guy under Fangio, and then just getting Eberflus out of there as defensive coordinator.
Yep.
Um, good moves by the Cowboys. Nothing, not super flashy. They didn't make themselves a lot better. That the draft is the goal for that. But like this was my bar, right, for like good offseason. They didn't get worse. They brought in some good players. Yes, they moved on from Odigizua, but he wasn't fitting where they were going at defensive tackle.
Right.
So I like what the Cowboys did.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think that last year they worked on their interior defensive line after the Parsons
Hmm.
trade. Now they trade for Rashawn Gary, add some edge rushing help. They drafted Donovan Ezraku last year. So I'm not saying that counts for the ranking here, but
Right.
they filled another edge rusher spot there. I think Jalen Thompson has a chance to be a pretty big time playmaker for them, especially if the rest of their defense fills out nicely. And then they kept their offense intact, which is an elite offense last year. So
Hmm.
if that had been overhauled, that could have been something else. But they did a nice job. I had the Cowboys, I think, a little bit higher than you as well, but all same reasons, right? Plug
Yeah.
some holes on defense, made smart decisions, and are set up to, if they draft well, they should be pretty competitive again this year.
All right, so that's the rest of our top half. 49ers at 9, then Lions, Texans get pulled from my third tier and Josh's first tier. Broncos are here, Cowboys, Titans, Falcons with their new head coaching moves, and then the Patriots round out the top 16. And so, yeah, man, I think your Vikings are going to get to have the 17 spot. The
Right.
Vikings, Jaguars, Bears, and Seahawks, all for me, were just kind of like, they're all just fine. I don't think any of those teams. I say I don't think they got better, but obviously the Vikings made it what I think is a huge upgrade at quarterback. I have questions about other spots on the roster, but like made a big upgrade at quarterback. So Vikings, I think up next makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Vikes get credit for getting Kyler in at the vet minimum deal. And I was prepared to just slot them in where it made sense because they didn't have any money to work with. We were in the red to start the offseason, and
Right.
it was gonna be a challenge. So I didn't hate anything the Vikings did. I also didn't get overly excited because what were we gonna do? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
we released Aaron Jones, we were able to resign him because nobody wants that age of a running back, but at least we get him back who's familiar. But there's not a lot exciting. But then they bring in Kyler Murray, and I think that's a big deal. I think he definitely will probably win the starting job to start the season. We have Carson Wentz back in for
You will definitely
backups.
probably win the starting job.
You know,
Kyler Murray,
it's
everybody.
called confidence. I don't. It feels we've. I stopped eagerly awaiting our new GM hire after Kwesi gets fired. Um, and so I was gonna maybe knock them for like, well, what are we gonna do with GM? But then they have Rob Brzezinski, who's been there forever,
Hmm.
who's just doing GM duties until after the draft. And I was thinking about that. I was like, you know what, that is kind of a stability thing that I don't hate.
Yeah.
Let whoever you hire, let them see what the full roster, what the full complement of players is going to be. Don't hire a guy a month before he's got to come in and, make the draft picks or whatever. So I think from an organizational standpoint, that feels like a smart move, even though, everyone's going to be anxious to see who's our next GM, of course. Um, but yeah, so I don't hate anything the Vikings did there. Definitely have some holes to fill.
Yeah.
Uh, and we'll see what happens. But um, pick at 18, we're getting a safety or a good offensive lineman or
Oh, I
Jeremiah
also
Love.
like the
Jeremiah Love.
the James Jeremiah Love the James Pierre move.
Hmm.
Is just a good player who
Yep.
Brian Flores was in the building in Pittsburgh with. He's a guy that like you sign and you hope in the draft you get somebody a little bit better, and if you have to play him for the season, you're okay with it. At the very least, he's a very good special teamer, so
Right.
enjoy that. Huge hole at center. Like there's a real group of teams that are going to be drafting between like 70 and 85 that are going to be hoping to get the like four centers in that range, and the Vikings are in that group. It's like the Vikings, the Ravens. To me, the Bengals should be in that group. The Browns should be in that group.
Yeah.
There's at least one or two other teams that in that range of the draft are going to be looking for centers. Because
Yep.
right now the Vikings, I think they have who's that big 6'7" guy that they have listed at center right now?
Blake Brendel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that can't happen. You
No.
gotta. there's got to be something else happening there.
Jurgens is the backup, but yeah, that Brandel's played. Brandel's one of those guys that we've used at every spot on the line, but
Hmm.
probably not for the smart thing. But Ryan Kelly retires, so
Yeah.
we're stuck there. But yes, we definitely need to we definitely need to draft a center for sure.
But anyways, they still get that. They still get 17 for us here.
Yep.
All right, looking big picture at this group here, we both have the Bears in this tier, so they'll come up soon. We both have the Dolphins in this tier, so they'll come up soon. I pulled down the Jags, who I had at 16, who you don't have here, so we'll talk about next. But I pulled
Yep.
down the Jets based on everything we said. Roster a lot better, but coaching staff questionable. And with all the differences we have, I think they will certainly be in this group here.
Yep.
The Colts and the Browns, I'm not as confident in necessarily surviving to here, but we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Talking about the Jags, the Jags didn't do a whole lot, but what I really like for the Jags is they kept their coaching staff, who both OC and DC were like dark horse candidates to get head coach jobs, so they keep those guys in the building.
Yep.
Um, they extended Trayvon Walker, they re-signed Monteric Brown, the cornerback. But they did lose players. They lost Andrew Wingard, Greg Newsome, Devin Lloyd, and Travis Etienne. They signed Chris Rodriguez at running back.
Yep.
But to me, like I wouldn't have wanted to pay Devin Lloyd that money for them, right? For already having their number one linebacker. He's their number two. I wouldn't have wanted to pay both. Um, Etienne like just seems like the writing was on the wall that this was going to happen. And then Monteric Brown, I think, is him coming back and Newsome leaving is a part of that like defensive back realignment that they're working towards in terms of Travis Hunter, like reportedly is going to
Yep.
focus mainly on cornerback right now, be a starter for them on that side. So those are their outside corners and Jordan Lewis is their slot. All that just fits together a lot better. Um, but is it just they lost a lot of players and didn't really add anybody for Jacksonville for you? Why they're further down?
Yeah, they didn't feel like they did much to me. They lost players, and I've been listening to too many fantasy podcasts, which I know shouldn't factor in, but they're like, "Ooh, Liam Cohen and Chris Rodriguez worked together at Kentucky in college," and I'm like, "Okay, fantastic." But I think it's still a downgrade from Travis Etienne or
Yeah,
Travis.
I would say.
Is it really pronounced Etienne?
Yeah, yeah. So he
Came
said
out
like
that okay.
that's how it's pronounced. And now that he's in New Orleans, he feels like there's enough people that he can tell and they'll actually pronounce it right because that's how it's supposed to be pronounced. But being in South Carolina at Clemson, they never got it right for the first like 3 weeks he was there. So he just let them say ETN.
Yeah,
But now that he's in New Orleans, like they say it the correct way. So it's A-Chan. Yeah.
yeah, interesting. Okay.
And then you've got
So
A-Chain, who we thought was A-Chain for a while. And I think I even said A-Chain last week because I got earwormed by somebody.
yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Um,
good stuff.
so yeah, I don't think they needed to do a whole lot either. I'm not mad at them for what they did. Like I didn't try
Right.
to dock them for that. It was just for me, it came down to like, okay, Monteric Brown was a great re-signing. He was 20th overall ranked by PFF. Like he had a good year, and with like you said, Hunter potentially playing more outside corner, less receiver. I was like, how much do I move him up? And I was like, can I really move him up that much for that? So
Hmm.
they fell to 27 more mainly because like I had them up at 21 or 22 at some point, but I had other teams jump them and I was like, I don't mind pushing them down because they didn't do a whole lot, if that makes sense. Like they didn't
Yeah.
I don't feel like they did, but they also didn't need to. Like I didn't think that they had giant glaring needs, I guess.
Hmm.
So we'll see.
So when we, yeah, because I'm showing them actually to the viewers right now, and they can see them at 18. I'm not going to fight for them to stay. I'd even be willing to put the Jets at 18 as we sort out the rest of this and bump Jacksonville down a little bit. But I think Jacksonville deserves to be in this tier because I just don't think they got a whole lot worse, right? Because
Yeah.
in terms of the running back, also with Rodriguez, like they drafted Bashal Tutin last year, and that was clearly for a reason. Like it's funny.
Yeah.
We laugh at the fantasy podcasts and managers, and they all were like, "Oh, look at Tootin,"
Yeah.
and it did actually play out a year later. So maybe those guys
Yeah.
know what they're talking about a little bit.
Maybe.
But then we're very different on a lot of these other teams here. We both have the Dolphins, which I think everyone knows what's up with the Dolphins, right? We've kind of
Yeah.
talked that to death. But they were my Mendoza line of if you were above the Dolphins for me, I think you were just fine, and if you were below them. I think that was clearly like you got worse. Now people can see in my ranking, I had the Texans there, and now we've moved the Texans way up. So like clearly, I'm a little flexible in that designation. But
Yeah.
like if I think your team had a poor, either got worse or had a poor run of the offseason so far, you go below Miami for me because they got actively worse. I like Halfley as head coach, but I hate Bobby Slowick being retained slash promoted from their like passing game coordinator to their OC. Like Halfley just got there and was like, "Who's in the building today? Bobby Slowick? Oh, he's been an offensive coordinator before. You're hired." And it's like, well, this is gonna be a disaster. Um, but everything else about Halfley being there like makes me feel
Yeah.
great. Everything they're talking about with John Eric Sullivan as their new GM and building through the draft, all that is great. I went through the exercise with Ben last week on the pod and like I actually like if you now that everything's been stripped down, right? And they're an actively worse team, but the pieces that are there kind of as their pillars, as their building blocks for the season, Zach Sealer, Chop Robinson, Jordan Brooks on defense, and then Aaron Brewer, um, and signing Malik Willis and Patrick Paul looks like an ascending left tackle potentially. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. Obviously, they have the talented running back and in Achan and they're Devin Achan and whether however I feel about that and they had to restructure his rookie contract to make the Jalen Waddle trade work, which I don't actually love, but they get a haul for Jalen Waddle
Yep.
and their Mike Mendoza line similar to Atlanta a little bit, but to a bigger degree because Atlanta got rid of depth pieces, but they still have Drake London. They still have, whatever you feel about Kyle Pitts, but they still have Lindstrom. Like they still, and Penix, like they have their pillars already in place in terms of like actual stars. And Jesse Bates is still there and a lot of that defense that they brought in from last year.
Yeah.
But Miami's like truly stripping it all the way down, which is why they're down here for me. Um,
That's
but everybody below them for me feels like those are the teams that we think actually had poor off seasons so far, and everyone above is like, this is all fine.
yeah. No, I think you said it exactly right there because I there's an argument for if you're a believer in teams rebuilding when they know they should rebuild, like there's an argument for Dolphins to be higher than this because they're not hiding the fact that this is a
Hmm.
rebuilding team. They have some young guys and pillars, but they trade away Waddle. They have Malik Willis on a 2-year deal, which is perfect, right? Best case,
Hmm.
he's still young enough to build around. Worst case, you get high draft picks still while you're rebuilding because you know you're rebuilding, right? And in return for him, they're not going to give him any receivers to throw to, which is fine because he has Greg Dulcich. So it's all gonna be fine. No, but they're so I had them here because they're like at the tail end of they're trying something, but we know what they're trying and we know what the plan is, and so you can't put them too high because this team is going to be rebuilding for at least 2 years, if not three, before they're back in the playoffs. And I think they're fine with that. Then I think I think you and Peyton talked about it on one of I forget which pod I was listening to of your guys's, but that's like they want you to they want to convince us that they're not tanking, but they're tanking. Like
Yeah, 100%.
they want a high draft pick, but they don't want to slap the fans in the face and say, yeah, you're going to watch garbage for the whole season. So yeah, they're doing what they're supposed to. It's going to be a rough couple of years for Miami fans, but this is the best option for them, and so they get a little credit for that, but not. You can't move them high because they're going to be bad.
Can we keep Jacksonville above them?
Sure.
Okay. And that doesn't even have to be at 1920, but just mapping it out. We both have the Bears in this tier, so let's try to do them quick since we both
Yep.
agree they're somewhat close together. Um,
Yep.
I had the Bears. They bring in Press Taylor for Declan Doyle, which will be interesting to see Press Taylor away from. Oh man, I always forget his name now because that's the way he likes it. The guy who went from Philadelphia to Jacksonville, and then Press Taylor was always with him. Oh, who was the head coach for Jacksonville before
Doug Peterson.
Cohen? Yes, thank you. He
Doug
was
Peterson.
he
Oh,
was
okay.
Peterson's OC, and it was
Oh,
always like
gotcha.
who's calling plays. Nobody liked if Press Taylor was calling plays, but Chicago, and he's not going to be calling plays for Chicago. So like there you go. Free agency, they replaced Tremaine Edmonds with Devin Bush, as we mentioned, Andrew Billings with Neville Gallimore, replaced Drew Dolman with Garrett Bradbury, which was like a good pivot, right, in an emergency
Consolation. Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, although another sneaky for Ben Johnson, who had Frank Ragnow as the center at one point, um, to go with a guy like Garrett Bradbury screams that he likes one of those centers in the middle of the draft too. So sneaky, watch out for the Bears drafting a center.
Mhm.
Um, they lose Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Nishan Wright, all those defensive backs, and then they bring in Kobe Bryant from Seattle. Um, so Browns like let the secondary go, but focus on trying to keep the fronts pretty strong. Why did you have them? Down there at where'd you have them at 23
in the early
ultimately?
20s.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
they didn't do a whole lot that really got me excited, but I also don't know how much they needed to do. Their offense is going to be in great shape still. Um, and I didn't knock them from Drew Dahlman. They can't deal with him retiring. So I actually gave them a little nudge for Garrett Bradbury. If that was their big center signing, if they had nobody, I wouldn't give them a bump for that. But
Hmm.
a decent pivot, decent consolation because they can't factor in Dahlman retiring. I'm my thing with the Bears. I'm interested to see how Kobe Bryant fits
Hmm.
in the defensive backfield because he's coming from an elite overall defense, and I don't know how it'll be with the Bears. So like I looked at that signing
Yeah.
and was like, is this going to be a nice big upgrade? Because like you mentioned, they lost Brisker, they lost Nashon Wright. Nashon Wright didn't get a big deal either. So the league must
Yeah.
know that he's not going to be something super
Hmm.
epic. Um, but for Kobe Bryant, I was like, this is interesting because he was one of the guys that I thought Seattle was going to try to keep around. And so I'm wondering if he's just going to be a guy now when he's on an average
Yeah.
defense versus a kind of a name guy because the whole Seattle defense was names last year because they were so good,
Right.
right? Like so that
Hmm.
that'll be my interesting thing. But I don't. So I think they definitely got a little worse, which is why they're in the 20s. But I didn't want to bury them because they didn't need to do a whole ton. They need to upgrade at spots, but the opportunity wasn't there. I don't blame them for not getting Linderbaum because I don't even know the timing if they would have had a chance if they thought they had Dahlman and Linderbaum was really pricey. So I don't fault other teams for not going after him either. Um, so when you talk about center, so yeah, I just didn't do much to excite me because I don't know if Kobe Bryant's going to be a big name signing there, but
Yeah.
they're kind of like the Jags, where I feel like they're in good shape relative to where they were last year. So,
Yeah. The center thing for me, yeah, that's interesting because I think it all just came about so fast that Dahlman retired that they just wanted to get it done. So
mhm,
so Linderbaum and it would have been a lot of money. So and I don't think they were in position to do that. The thing to me was Biotish because Biotish was released by the Commanders. So they anybody so when the Chargers signed him, anybody could have signed him ahead of free agency because he had been released. And they actually brought him in for a meeting. So I was like, oh, if they pivot from Dahlman to Biotish, like this is a home run. Like to be and this is what smart teams do, right? Take advantage of a bad team like the Commanders, who we're going to talk about next,
right.
releasing a good player for 8 million bucks, which didn't even end up being 8 million bucks. Like they saved like three or something like that. Um, and like your center retires, your big money center retires, and now there's good players just available, and he's available ahead of free agency, and you could just get this done. But they ended up going with Bradbury instead, which again, to me screams they like somebody in the draft. So let's wait and see what happens there. Um, So how do
I
you feel about doing the Bears potentially ahead of the Dolphins as well?
I'm okay with that. I think we can. They're close enough where we can go with, well, who's in better shape right now? For sure, the
Yeah.
Bears over the Dolphins.
How
That
many? So the rest of your tier here, the rest of this group, because your actual tier. Let me look at your rankings you sent me. Your actual tier goes to like 11 to 20, and then you had a new one start at 21,
yeah,
and we're kind of right in that range now. So when your group here that starts at 21, let me pull it up for the viewers. Starting with Denver, is this like ultimately you think they were bad, or is this still just like they didn't help themselves?
it's not necessarily bad. This is my tier four. Yeah, so this is like the ultimate tier of it's kind of just man, there's a lot of
Hmm.
names for some of these guys, or for some of these teams where the quantity might be there, recognition of who they brought in. Looks like they're doing a lot, but really they're not doing a whole lot. So
Yeah,
that's why, because I gave
re
the nod.
rearranging deck chairs.
Yes, yeah, because you saw I had Washington much higher than you. I I wasn't like ultra impressed with what they did, but
Hmm.
it did, when I look at the names they brought in, it does look like they're trying to capitalize on the early success Jaden Daniels had, and like they're trying to build around what they have right now to try to go for it with him with a healthy year. Because they did bring in quite a few guys that are legitimate. I on the last pod I said they should bring in Isaiah Likely for that next big target. And they did get Chigo Okonkwo in, who's going to be a nice pass catching option for Jaden Daniels. Maybe not enough to move the needle, but they and then they have brought in a bunch of offensive line guys or re-signed a lot of the ones that they had as well. So that's why I had them higher, just because I feel like they they made a statement that they were relatively confident in what they were going to do. But then you mentioned they released Biotish, so who knows?
Yeah, to me the Biot and I did this on a different pod, so I'll try not to do it the full thing again. But between Biotish being released and then the coaching changes, that just is screaming like organizational dysfunction. And again, maybe this is a little bit like what I did with the Lions, where I think I let the vibe sneak in a little bit.
Hmm.
But like to lose Cliff Kingsbury because the front office wanted to go a different way, basically. I don't love. Um, they have to make a change at DC. And then if you look at the roster, yes, I like that they went and spent money on Odafe Owe and K'Lavon Chasen. Like,
Yeah.
uh, they need a pass rush. I like, even though he's not the same kind of linebacker, and they still need somebody that can be a true Mike linebacker. Bobby Wagner to Leo Chenal to at least just be a like mess some dudes up sort of thing and like infusion of some run and hit. Like that's fun.
Hmm.
I don't think Chenal or Frankie Louvu as their starting linebackers is great in terms of like who wears the green dot and who's like really your Mike linebacker sort of deal. But like it, Bobby Wagner's done. Like something needed to happen. But they go get Nick Cross, which is nice in terms of like another just like at you kind of run at you kind of guy. Meek Robertson is a good corner, and Marshawn Lattimore being out of there is good. But now they're built around two small corners. Like I
Yeah.
don't love that. Um, and then yeah, to just release Tyler Biotish, which again just feels like front office meddling.
Right.
Like what other reason would Dan Quinn have to release Biotish over 2 or 3 million bucks? Unless quietly Biotish wanted to leave for some reason, like if he just loved Cliff and was like, I'm out of here
Right.
because of the way this all went down. But I don't see that being the case. So I punished them. I put them at 30 because
Yeah.
to me the moves that the the way that people are exiting to me is screaming there's something off going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that
But I think
makes
if you just look at it, and I did say this, I think so. It was on the O line pod that I did with Shane, and it was when they released Biotish, and at that point they hadn't brought back Chris Paul, who had a pretty good year for them at left guard. But now they have brought him back, and they brought him back pretty cheap. So like now, if center is really their only hole on the offensive line, you can finagle that, and that's another team that could use a center in the third round of the draft. But even if Nick Allegretti has to play the spot, you know, if he's behind between Paul and Cosme, and then they have two good tackles, like that's not horrible.
Mhm.
So I do appreciate that they went out and they improved on one of their corner spots. Oh, and it's three short corners because Trey Amos as well as Sanders Still. So they got three short corners.
Yep.
Nick Cross, who's not known for being the pass coverage safety, and then linebackers who don't really pass cover either. They're just like
Yep.
run defense and blitzing linebackers. It's a weird defense, even though I like the names. Um, so I would still put them below, but maybe I can move them up from 30, somewhere between this 18 and 30.
Okay. Yeah, I think
And then
that's
we've got messes everywhere else, man. So
we
let
got
me try
so
to
many
quickly run through
boxes.
this. So ultimately, what I wanted to get to with the tiers for you is you just think most of these teams at this point haven't gotten better, right?
Correct. The and then the my last tier I just called ultra meh. Like that they didn't necessarily.
And it's like the remaining teams I have in this tier for me: Packers,
Yes.
Cardinals, Bucks,
Yeah.
Seahawks.
Teams that I was like, you didn't do anything. I know you might still be a good team in the case of like the Packers, but
Hmm.
they did nothing and they just lost guys. And so I'm like, you know,
Let me see. Let me see what I think about the Packers.
let's see what I
That's true. That's true on the Packers. You know, and this is the fallout of Micah Parsons. Like you bring in Micah Parsons, but I sneaky might think they might have upgraded at linebacker. That was the thing that saved
okay.
them for me. I like Quay Walker's nice and he's younger, but I sneaky kind of think Zaire Franklin just might be better than Quay Walker.
Okay.
Um, and a little bit like Raheem Morris. I don't think Jonathan Gannon is the same schem schemer or play caller as Robert as Halfley leaving, but you at least get a known quantity. Although if I really
Yeah.
think about it, man, he was not a very good defensive coordinator in Philly. So like this actually, if this defense was made in Halfley's image and now Gannon is coming in, that might be more of a negative than I gave it credit for.
Yeah.
I also gave them a little bit of credit for letting Elton Jenkins and Rasheed Walker walk, even though
Hmm.
I do think they got less talented. They have a cleaner picture on the offensive line. So, but you're probably right. I probably need to push them down. So we'll push them down. Cardinals. Um, I think for this roster, I like their additions more than I dislike their subtractions. I like Elijah Wilkinson and Isaac Seumalo coming to the offensive line, even though they lost more players. I think they got
Yeah,
more quality players in. Um,
that's
Jalen
fair.
Thompson leaves, Dalvin Tomlinson leaves, but I actually like them getting Tyler Algier for $7 million to be a good running back. Um, they also signed Kendrick Bourne. Like that's a nice like number three receiver for them if they don't do that in the draft. And then they kind of got like the leftovers at head coach. They literally hired the last head coach, and it's because they were holding. First, they were trying to get Saleh, right? And he uses that to leverage to get the Titans job. And then they're at that point they're like, well, we're not just gonna like take Todd Monken because we have, or I don't even know if he interviewed, but like Vance Joseph just because we have to. We'll wait out and we'll try to get Kubiak, and if we don't get Kubiak, we'll get Kubiak light and get Lafleur. And like process, I don't love. I respect the gumption to just be like, no, we want this
Yeah.
guy and we're gonna hold out for him if we don't get him. Like, listen, I liked what LaFleur did with the Jets. I'm like the only one in the country, but I kind of like what LaFleur was doing when he was OC of the Jets, and then he's under McVay for a couple seasons. Like,
Yeah.
they might have accidentally gotten into this into a good spot, so that's why I was a little higher on the Cardinals than you.
Okay.
Um, the Bucks, same thing. I actually kind of like their offensive coordinator upgrade, Grizzard to Zach Robinson. I'm into that. Levante David retires. The Bucks are another version of the Falcons and the Dolphins for me, where like they're just getting ready to fully transition into a new era of their team. Um, so I'm not mad that they didn't keep Mike Evans and N'Kobe and not N'Kobe Dean, Jamel Dean. Um, but they do lose those guys. They lose Jamel Dean and didn't get a one for one replacement for him. Now they drafted a bunch of corners last year, so like they're just getting younger at the spot. Mike Evans, and they did that a couple years ago, and we actually talked about it on this podcast
Yeah.
when Carlton Davis left because they were handing the job to whoever the other young corner on the team is right
Was
now,
it
who I can't think
Zion
of.
McCollum?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And like I'm not I can't sit here and speak to how good I think Simon McCollum's been, but he's still their starter. So like
Right.
I think he's
Right.
doing okay. Um Meanwhile, Carlton Davis went to the Lions and got hurt, and then went to the Patriots and got hurt a little bit. So I think he got hurt. I might have spoken out of turn there. My bad. Um and
Yeah.
then they replace Rashad White with Kenneth Gainwell, which is a nice upgrade. And Levante David retires, but they get Alex Anzalone, who's that same like bit of a playmaker, bit of a guy that's always around the ball, like leader, captain, green dot kind of guy. They also get Christian Roseboom, who has done a lot of stuff like that with the Panthers. So they insulated themselves at linebacker a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I actually kind of sneaky like what the Bucks did,
Oh, okay.
even if they got worse at key areas in terms of Evans and Dean both leaving and David retiring.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I respect that because they were a bottom third defense, and I don't think they added nearly enough on defense
Right.
personally to really shore up things. But I also didn't think of the Bucks as entering into a rebuilding zone, but they probably are for sure because this is the last year of the Baker deal, and I doubt they're going to give him an extension, right? He might get a
Nope.
prove
I
it
think
deal
it's
if it's cheap and no one else wants him, but they are probably knocking on the door of rebuilding. So because I viewed it as okay, this team was terrible on defense. And all they did was add a running back. Well, they already have, I know they lost Rashad White, but they have great running back Bucky Irving. They have Sean Tucker, who's done fine in certain roles. So, like, the Gainwell thing didn't do much for me. And then I was pretty high on Mike Evans going somewhere else. So I think that was that vacated a lot. That's why I had them at 31. I didn't put them at 32 because I can't have teams with the Bay at 32 because I apparently hate all teams with the Bay. I was getting close to putting Tampa Bay at 32. I was like, I can't do that again. I cannot put the Bucks at 32 again on any list we do because of my big faux pas not too long ago. So,
Yeah, it is funny your bottom five teams are like four of the five are right in this group for me. I think what's happening as we get lower, you're leaving more room for teams getting better through the draft. Like you're leaving the room of like, and maybe by definition I'm leaving more room, but you're like you haven't gotten better at these things.
right,
Therefore, you're doing bad. And for me, I'm like you're setting yourself up maybe to get better via the draft,
right,
which is risky, right? Which is risky.
right.
You don't want to set yourself up just to do that. But I'm starting to feel like because the Bucks like yeah, they need an edge rusher. I think they're going to do that at pick 15, or maybe they even trade back a little bit. So not that I'm factoring that in, but I'm just looking at like what did you do? What were your goals kind of the offseason? So that's interesting. Now the Seahawks. I have at 18. You have a 32. What's the word? Surprise, I guess, for everybody. Spoiler alert is the word I'm looking for. Um,
Let me give you my,
and
my let me give you my Seahawks spiel. They're not going to be at 32, and I knew that going into it, but I was like, what did I?
more
So
more running back propaganda.
yeah, honestly, kind of. I even wrote my first note. I was like, okay, it's ridiculous to have the Seahawks here. But I feel like they were worse than meh in my opinion. Like they didn't just like it just reeks of so much cockiness because they won the Super Bowl. And who am I to tell the Super Bowl winning team what they should do? Because clearly they're onto something. Um, I don't even hate the JSN deal, but I still knocked him for that because it was so expensive. And
Interesting.
I don't know if,
Offensive player of the year, JSN. Yeah,
yeah,
Josh doesn't
yeah,
like it.
yep, nope. I think that's his peak.
Hang on,
I
wait.
think this was the
Did he go
year,
one pick ahead of Addison? Is that how that worked?
something like that.
All right,
Something.
just tracking, just keeping track.
Yeah, but so did Quentin Johnson when I had Addison too. So
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. That doesn't that doesn't work for my that doesn't work for my narrative that I'm creating here.
no, I think that JSN's at his peak and he's a great player. I'm not knocking him for sure. And
Right, right, right.
if I'm the Seahawks and I just won the Super Bowl, I'm for sure paying him. Like that's just the nature of it. So I didn't really knock him much for that, um but I also don't think he's going to fully live up to that. Here's where I'll get clowned now for the whole next year when he just dominates again. But on top of that, they paid Shaheed as well, and that one I don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
He averaged 20 receiving yards a game and he's getting $50 million. Like I know he's something in the return game and I know you need a guy to take off the top a little bit, but you can get that anywhere, right? They
Yeah.
traded for him and he didn't really do much unless I'm missing something. Maybe he is the world's best decoy and he
Hmm.
gets credit for that or something.
That's what it
But
seems like. Yeah.
and who knows? Maybe he is better than a bunch of people, but or for that role. But I thought that was an overpay. And then for running backs, I mean, they're going in there with Emmanuel Wilson and George Holani until Zach Charbonnet's back. People need to
Yeah.
remember Zach Charbonnet is going to miss the first 6 weeks of the year, and you're going to let go the Super Bowl MVP, who always gets a bad rap for these negative runs that aren't always his fault. I've watched him on interviews break down his finding the hole and being patient. Like he knows how to be a running back, and he's got the explosive ability. And I'm like, you're not going to even. I know they probably not didn't want to pay him. I get that, but that's a significant downgrade. Um, and so I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna go after the Super Bowl champs here and say, you know what? You're just too cocky. It's harder than you think to win back to back. You're not going to win the Super Bowl again this year. Your defense was elite last year. They did re-sign Josh Jobe. I thought they were going to re-sign Kobe Bryant. I thought they were going to re-sign somebody.
Hmm.
I didn't dive into their cap situation, but
Hmm.
um, I don't know if Josh Jobe would have been the one corner I would have kept out of the because it was I know Tariq Woolen
Tariq
doesn't bother
Woolen.
me that
Hmm.
much. Woolen is a nice playmaking type corner, but I don't know if he's a build around in that regard either.
Yeah.
So they probably chose Josh Jobe as like the most stable of the
Yeah.
cover guys, which is probably accurate. So I don't hate that, but I'm also like, but you didn't like Kobe Bryant. Like, I don't know, whatever. So
Hmm.
anyway, and I knew they were going to probably lose an edge rusher or they were going to lose Boye Mafe, so that's not super surprising. But um, I'm just like, you know what? When you get to the top of the mountain, there's only one way to go, and that's down. And I don't like what they did, so I'm going to put them at 32 because, but it's probably more realistic for us to put them here, like probably right before the Dolphins, maybe.
Okay.
It would be
Yeah.
probably pretty silly to, because by my own logic, they should have been in the trying something tier, right? Because they are
Hmm.
paying the guys they want to pay, and they're going to run it back with Sam Darnold for another couple years, and they just won the Super Bowl. Like they should get some credit for that. So, like if we're looking for Team 21 right now, I feel like I would be willing to get the Seahawks because I'd rather have the Seahawks probably over those Bay teams and the Cardinals and such. So.
And I had those teams below the Dolphins too. So because I do think they actively got worse or had and yeah, the Packers I'm happy to push down a little bit the more I think about it. I've done a bunch of Seahawks stuff the last couple of weeks with Peyton during the awards, and then Ben, we just did the Draft War Room series. So I've made all my thoughts known on that. We should also just say for coaching, they obviously go from Clint Kubiak, who just like Kenneth Walker, like got hot at the end of the year, had a great season, and turned that into a head coach job.
Hey,
But they get Brian Fleury, who tight ends coach for Shanahan.
yeah.
So like a guy that knows the run game, knows the blocking schemes, knows the pass game, did it under Shanahan. So like that's exactly where you want to shop because that's where McDonald got Kubiak. He got him from being not straight out of there, but Kubiak went from pass game coordinator in San Francisco to OC in New Orleans. So it makes sense that they shop in that
And I will say that,
style.
yeah, Ken Walker did get hot at the end of the year, but it's not his fault that his coaches think that Zach Charbonnet needs as many touches as he gets. That should be more
And
of a
and
70-30 split, and it would be way more about Ken Walker.
and I'm actually with you. Like considering if it had just been letting Ken Walker leave, I'd be like, okay. But to give Ken Walker money to Rashid Shaheed when the reason Shaheed made sense with Seattle was because of Kubiak
Yeah,
coming from New Orleans. Like that was why that those dots got connected. And then Kubiak didn't even get him involved in the offense. And then Kubiak leaves. So it's like now somebody else is going to get Shaheed to be worth 15, 16, 17 million dollars. I even would have rather just given that money to Ken Walker and said
right.
like we drafted whatever wide receiver we drafted last year.
Torrey Horton.
Yeah, we drafted Torrey Horton. Like,
Yep.
I think he could be Rashid Shaheed
Yep.
for way less
100%.
money. So,
100%.
like, we pay Ken Walker, and maybe we wanted to pay Charbonnet instead, but maybe now we just don't do that. And we look for one more year, one more playoff run where they're both together by the playoffs when Charbonnet's maybe healthy, and then we let Charbonnet walk, and we had paid Walker, and we draft a Charbonnet replacement eventually. But yeah, I've done enough Seahawks. So if we put Seahawks at 21, we put Dolphins at 22, and then we're kind of getting to the teams that actively hurt themselves over
Correct.
this period of time. And so, oh, you know what? We probably should put the Commanders somewhere. So do you want the Commanders one spot above or one spot below the Dolphins based on what we've said so far?
Um, let's put them one spot ahead of the Dolphins, I think.
Okay. Because
I think
they,
that's
yeah,
probably
they,
fair.
I do like the swings and I do like the insulation. I like the swings of the pass rush and I like the insulation of the offensive line. And
Yeah.
even though I wouldn't build my defensive backs around three guys who are under 6 feet tall, um, I like all the players individually that they have doing it.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that's at least, and it can't be worse than what it was last year. So okay,
Correct.
so and all that I just got lost. So we said Washington ahead of Miami, right?
Yeah, but we're gonna do Seattle after Chicago,
Right.
and then
Okay.
we're gonna do Washington after Seattle, and then the Dolphins will be at 23. Yeah. Yep, that makes
So
sense.
then it's gonna be, did I do enough for Arizona or Tampa Bay to be ahead of Pittsburgh in your eyes, or Buffalo? I guess we still have Buffalo here too.
I will give you Arizona. I'll give you
Okay.
Arizona because I think wait, what did I even write about your Steelers?
Steelers.
They got Jamel Dean, which I liked, and going after Pittman is trying something because you guys have never wanted to have two receivers that are good, which is interesting. Um,
Bold strategy, but Pittsburgh
but
Steelers.
but I was gonna dock them because I like at this point I feel like they should know what they're doing at quarterback. I think is it just to get foregone conclusions, gonna be Rodgers again, or
I
like
think so. I think he's just doing what he did last year, and like he doesn't want to come to OTAs and spring
right?
work, so he's just not signing and
Okay,
just staying at home. And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine, Aaron.
yeah. So I don't.
Don't worry, we don't need you to come work out in the spring. They're so
Yeah,
stupid. I hate them.
they're so stupid.
Mike McCarthy is even maybe I made fun of the Browns and Monken might even be a worse head coaching move than Todd Monken. And I said that when it happened, but that's where I'm at.
Um, but they also got our guy Jaquan Brisker, so that's nice. A couple nice secondary
Yes.
pickups,
Mhm.
right? Um, and
It's
I
another
put
team where like if you just look at the players and like take away the context and take away the coaching, like oh they brought in good players,
yeah,
Michael Pittman, Jaquan Brisker, Jamel Dean,
yeah,
but you add it to the context of everything else and it
yeah.
kind of ruins it.
So where does it where answer you're the best one to answer this question because I also then moved them back up. The reason I have them a little bit higher than where you have them is because I think they get an improvement score for moving on from Arthur Smith. Does that outweigh the Mike McCarthy hire, or is it as a wash because Mike McCarthy's bad hire, but Arthur Smith was bad? Like,
Yeah,
leaving
I
instead.
think it's a wash. I think it's a
Okay.
wash. I mean, I do like I think the structure of the offense can and probably will be better under Mike McCarthy. I do think that's true. I think whatever offensive coordinator was going to come to Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin, I think there was always going to be restraints put on that anyways. So
Sure.
even if they had just moved on from Arthur Smith and brought in somebody else, I don't actually think it would have looked that different ultimately.
And if it's
I at least
and
think
if
with Mike McCarthy, I'm trying to get myself excited because like even if I don't think the end result is going to be any different, I at least think the process and like what the offense can look like under McCarthy. Like I might get to watch like a modern version of football when my team plays. Now, will I actually enjoy that when they just like ultimately end up losing those games anyways, or would I rather watch my team play their own style of football that no one else plays anymore and sweat out the 9 wins versus like whatever the version is going to be now? I don't know. Well, I'll tell. I guess I'll update you in 6 months or so how I feel about it. Um,
and none of it may matter if Rodgers refuses to hold the ball for more than a half a second, right? Like,
right. That's the other thing. Like, yeah. Instead of quick slants, he's going to be throwing quick drag routes or quick screens, and it's not actually going to be. It's not, again, results are not going to be any different.
right.
All right, let me pull. Actually, I didn't. I don't think I went through a final like official what the nine not nine
17 to
17 to
24.
24 is for everybody at home. I keep showing everybody the box score full logo. Make sure you're checking out Box Score Network YouTube channel for all your NFL draft needs. But here was our 17 to 24 Vikings, Jets, Jags, Bears, Seahawks, Commanders, Dolphins as the Mendoza line, Cardinals at 24. And then I'm going to let anybody that's here at 2 hours and 22 minutes see me scroll. Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you're listening and you're listening for 2.5 hours and you don't see the scroll, sorry, come check us out on YouTube. So I pulled down. So we have the Steelers somewhere here. The Bills will sort out. The Packers will sort out. The Colts are going to be down here, who you had. The Browns are going to be down here, who you had. The Bucks will be down here, who you had a little higher. But we also have the Bengals down here. The Bengals are the Bengals and Eagles. I think are the only teams we both had down here at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's funny. Um, Buffalo. Let me roll through a couple of these teams real quick. You had Buffalo a little bit higher. For me, again, a vibes thing. Like I had my 31, as people can see. I just did not like the way the coaching thing went down. And
No.
it's funny with Sean McDermott. I even said I slacked this to Ben when the Bills lost the game because I remember I actually didn't get to watch that game at live when it was happening. But I was like, oh, the defense choked at the end. They had a few like big crucial mistakes. Okay, McDermott's gonna be fired. Like that's what he's supposed to hang his hat on. Like veteran coach, you're not gonna have mistakes. Defense is under his control now. They shouldn't have these playoff collapses on defense anymore. It's time. But then for Bean to collect all the extra power and then for them to just kind of go with Joe Brady, who I've wanted to be a head coach. I've been putting in places for 2 years, but it just feels again, it feels yucky that he got
Yeah.
it here this way.
Yep.
But if you look at the roster, like replace Teron Johnson with D. Alford, so got a younger but still good slot corner. Okay, replace Joey Bosa with Bradley Chubb, so just another old, aging, injured defensive end.
Yep.
Replace Jordan Poyer and Taylor Rapp with Geno Stone and Chauncey Gardner Johnson. Okay, fine. Replace David Edwards with Austin Corbett slash maybe Lloyd Cushenberry plays a little guard. Interesting. Lost Reggie Gilliam, which I put in for you because I know you love the fullbacks.
Oh
And then
yeah.
still free agents are Matt Milano, AJ Epinesa, Daquan Jones, and Matt Prater. There's a kicker. So maybe one of those guys comes back, but this team's under a transition, especially
Yeah.
defensively, right? So they
And
got
that,
younger, they got more no-name guys, so they're just kind of buy time on that defense until they rebuild it.
yep.
But Jim Leonard is a DC that I pegged early in the process. A lot of people are excited about him to be a DC somewhere. So Joe Brady, Jim Leonard, like Pete Carmichael, long time offensive assistant with the Saints under Peyton, and Brady and him have a relationship. So interesting. But again, the process of how everything got here and just that defense being ripped up. But hey, it was what 2 years
Yep.
ago on a power ranking show. They ripped up the old version of the Leslie Frazier defense
Yep.
and put in these younger, faster guys. And you were like, hey, this could be pretty good. And it actually was pretty good. So I don't know. Maybe this works out for the Bills. But
And I yeah, that,
process of how the coaching thing happened, especially, was what knocked them down for me.
yeah, the only thing I'll add is I was gonna have them lower too, but they did they're quote unquote trying something for in my eyes with the DJ Moore trade is not nothing. I don't know if I am as high on him as they are
I
to
didn't even
fill a
mention
role.
him in all of that write
Yeah.
up stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, because I wanted them to get a receiver. I wanted them to pay George Pickens. I think that would have been a much more fun,
Ooh.
like, but that's like DJ Moore, but he's produced with really bad quarterbacks. Like he's made
Mhm.
plays. Like he could be fun with Josh Allen, but I don't know. I don't know if I buy it.
So clearly, if people are watching this, if anybody's watching, you can see my group
If
here, 25 to 32. This is clearly, other than the Bengals, this is obviously for me like the coaching decisions and the coaching fallouts of bad like front office practices weighed in for me. Frank
yeah.
Reich to the Jets, Mike McCarthy to the Steelers, the Eagles ostracizing Jeff Stoutland to the point that he retires,
Mhm.
um,
And then signing four tight ends, like they have four
and
tight
signing four
ends in
tight
the
ends,
Bible.
and And then the Colts, not the coaching staff, but the process of Alec Pierce losing everybody else, Daniel Jones. And then the Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury, Tyler Biadasz, Joe Brady, and Bean for the Bills, and then getting to Tom Honken for Cleveland. A lot of this was just me getting here because of the coaching stuff. And obviously, we're going to have some things move around based on how Josh feels, I think, about the players and roster acquisition. You know, the Bengals add a couple players, but is that ultimately going to help? They don't do anything else. The Colts, everything we said before. Um,
Can
so yeah,
we?
where do you want to go next?
I want to come full circle to what I said about the Colts, that they were initially my team 32.
Mm.
I think if you give me Colts at 32, even though I had them at 15, because everything about this podcast has made sense. I want to go
I
Colts
had
at
him at
30.
15, but now I want them at 32.
I'm going to put them at 32, and then I'm going to advocate for my Browns to be at least at 31, and then I will let you sift out the teams from the bays so that I don't get, hate mail. Not that anyone's ever sent me hate mail, but
If
you're
you're
going to fight for
watching
the
this
Browns
and
at
sending
32. I
hate
know
mail,
it.
you're I don't know what you're doing, man. I don't know how you have the time to watch this and
Next
listen to
level.
this and then also want to send hate mail about it. Um, Josh, I don't think I can give you anybody below the Browns, man. I don't think I can do that.
Really?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I would rather give you the Packers at 30 than give you the Browns at 31.
All
How much can we
right, let me
screw
go back to the
our teams that we hate and just think are the worst?
Well, I was gonna make
You with the Packers and me with the
if you
Browns.
didn't have your Steelers solo, I was gonna give you some guff for like, okay, why is half your division in the bottom tier, Simon? But now three quarters of your division is.
They're horrible. They're all malcontent. What did I write about the Bengals? I didn't write much about the Bengals, to be honest with you.
There's not
Replace
much to
Geno
write.
Stone with Brian Cook. Replace Trey Hendrickson with Boye Mafe. Lose Joseph Sakai and sign Kyle Duggar. Like they just didn't talk about like doing the bare minimum. And technically they spent money on defense, but like not for anything
Yeah.
exciting or in a way that's going to help them.
The only
Um,
reason the Bengals got anything from me and they didn't get much, but is because they spent a little bit of money on defense. They had such a bad defense, but it's not enough to really
yeah.
shift the whole.
And like you can say that, but if they were really trying to help their defense, they just would have paid Trey Hendrickson 2 years ago. You know,
True. True. Very true.
this all could have been solved.
Would have
Are the
been
Bengals sneaky 32? Um,
maybe. I mean,
uh,
I'm not gonna jump to the eight of the Browns.
yeah, I think the Browns have to be
All
32.
right, go Browns 32. And then let's put the did we put the Cardinals up there already? Yeah, we have the Cardinals already.
Yeah, we had the Cardinals at 24.
Yeah, okay.
So we still need a spot for the Bucks, Bengals, Eagles,
Then
and
let's put the Colts at 28. Um, and then let's put the Bengals. Or no, we have the Bills there too somewhere. Let's put the let's put the Bills at 31. Let's see how well they can climb this ladder.
so then Bengals or Bucks. Man, you really want to bury the Bucks still?
No, fine, put the Bucks up there. I don't care. I don't
Should the Bucks be above or below the Colts?
Probably above the Colts, but not by much.
Should the Bucks be above or below the Packers? What are you gonna do with the Bay teams? I'm gonna make you choose.
Let's keep the Packers at 27. I had the Packers above the Bucks on my list, so
Okay.
yeah, that looks right. tell you
At the
what
end
though,
of the day, the
the,
Bucks lost Jamel Dean and Mike Evans didn't really do anything about it.
the
They're kind of just letting it all
Browns
happen.
Browns have 9 picks, so when we do this after the draft, you need to be prepared.
Great.
You need to be
Oh,
prepared for
wonderful.
them to get up into the next tier.
What's the worst way they can execute the draft and not help themselves?
Well, that's so I think part of the reason I had them too high is I started thinking about their future already. They can't really screw, well, they can screw it up because they're the
They can
Browns,
absolutely screw it up.
but they
They take
can't
Ty
though
Simpson at
because,
6.
okay, they're not, yeah, I suppose. But my whole thought was
Or
like,
Caden Proctor. The buzz is Caden Proctor, and if they take him at 6, it's a disaster.
my whole thought was they can't screw this up by taking a quarterback because it's not going to, there's a one quarterback draft, but I suppose the Browns could be the ones that would.
Tom Honkins like, I remember seeing Ty Simpson at the bench at Alabama while I was at Georgia. I like the cut of his jib. Let me take him at 6.
Ty Simpson and I get haircuts at the same place.
All right, that's
It'd
the
be
end of the
great to
pod.
have
If you
someone to
made it here
talk
for
to.
that joke, if you made it here for that, congratulations. Thank you for being here.
You win for all time.
You absolutely win. Comment if you heard that joke. Just comment the joke. Um, all right. Thank you all. If you're here on YouTube, thank you for checking this out. If you saw any version of it, any point of it on YouTube, we appreciate you. Like, subscribe, comment. If you're looking for draft content, go to Box Score Network YouTube. That's gonna have stuff all week, all next week, all week after. Um, Getting you ready and recapping the draft, previewing, reacting to everything. Um, and that's all the plugs. Check out all the pods on Box Score Network. Thank you all so much for here on Audio A1 Day One. We appreciate you. As always, we will talk to you again next time. Everyone have fun and be safe out there.